Chapter 684. The Divine Strategy Sect. The Divine Strategy Sect was one of the more mysterious sects in the northern region. The sect answered only to the northern region king and could be considered the intelligence department of the northern region. This sect was rather famous in the entire Xianhuang Great World. There was a saying in the northern region, "There is nothing the northern region king doesn't know." After the northern region king gave the order, the entire Divine Strategy sect became busy. There was a huge altar in the back mountain of the Divine Strategy sect. It was nearly 300 meters wide and had all kinds of strange black talismans drawn on it. At the same time, there was a portrait floating in the middle of the altar. The portrait of a woman in a plain dress. At that moment, four black-robed men and an old man stood around the altar. The old man was the sect master of the Divine Strategy sect, Jianghu. Jianghu closed his eyes as if he was waiting for something. Just like that, about 2 hours later, when the sun was high in the sky, Jianghu suddenly opened his eyes. Blood sacrifice. As soon as he said that, a lot of blood appeared on the huge altar. In the surroundings, the runes on the altar suddenly trembled. Jianghu began to chant something and the entire altar trembled more and more. After a long time, Jianghu suddenly looked up at the sky and said softly, "After her." As soon as he said that, the altar shook violently and a ball of red light suddenly wrapped around the portrait of the woman in a plain dress. The surrounding space began to distort. At that moment, the northern region king had already entered the ancient city. The inside of the city was empty and desolate. The northern region king came to the center of the city and saw a man lying in front of the city lord's mansion. The man's hair was disheveled and his face was dirty. His clothes were so black that his original appearance could not be seen and his body exuded a foul stench. Before the northern region king came, this man was the only living person in the city. The northern region king walked in front of the man and said softly, "Night King, aren't you going to welcome an old friend?" The man did not reply. The northern region king opened his palm and a red bead suddenly appeared in his palm. There was a woman lying in the red bead. At that moment, the man lying on the ground in the distance suddenly sat up and stared at the bead in the northern region king's hand. The northern region king said, "Her soul has been stored in a soul bead and is still being nurtured. If we have another soul treasure to suppress her soul, it will not be difficult to resurrect her." The man looked at the northern region king with killing intent in his eyes. The northern region king smiled and said, "Can you kill me?" The man slowly closed his eyes. "What do you want me to do?" The northern region king said, "What do you want me to do?" The man looked at the king of the northern region. "If you can't kill him, I can't either." The night king frowned and said, "Who do you want to kill?" The night king frowned and said, "Who do you want to kill?" The king of the northern region whispered, "A sword cultivator." Swordsman. The king of kings said and said, "King king, king of kings said." King of northern region king of king of north of, the king of was king of king. King. Kings king of kings said king of king of king of king. The northern region king thought for a moment and pointed. The red bead floated in front of the night king. The night king held the red bead in his hand and his whole body trembled. The northern region king said, "In the chaotic universe, there is a person called Yi Xian. He has a treasure that can suppress souls. However, you cannot touch him now. I need him to lure the swordsman out." The night king did not answer the northern region king. He looked at the red bead in his hand in a daze. The northern region king did not say anything else and turned to leave. After the northern region king left, the night king sat on the ground and muttered, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Outside the city, the northern region king shook his head and said, "Lovers are the most pitiful." At that moment, a little girl appeared beside the northern region king. She was about 11 or 12 years old and looked very similar to the northern region king. The little girl looked at the city and asked, "Father, who is this night king?" The northern region king smiled and said, "He was once as famous as me." The little girl frowned and said, "What right does he have to be as famous as father?" The northern region king shook his head and said, "Ah, Zhen, don't underestimate the people of the world. As he said this, he looked up at the sky and said, "In the vast universe, there are many people with special talents. Even I am not the best in this four-dimensional universe. Do you understand?" Zhen nodded and said, "I understand." The Northern Region King smiled and said, "You are talented. The only pity is that you have lived too peacefully under my protection. You do not have the murderous aura and ruthlessness of Yi Xian." Yi Xian. Zhen frowned and said, "You mean the Yi Xian from the chaotic universe?" The Northern Region King nodded and said, "He is a very talented person. No, his talent is secondary. His character is what I value the most. This person has come all the way from the small world. He is not simple." Zhen said in a low voice, "But he does not know how to appreciate kindness. Father wanted to take him as a son, but he refused." The Northern Region King smiled and said, "Because of this, I admire him even more." Zhen looked at the Northern Region King and asked, "Why?" The Northern Region King said softly, "Unyielding character. More and more people don't care about it now." Zhen hesitated and said, "Although father admires him, you will still kill him, right?" The Northern Region King nodded and said, "Yes." Zhen asked again, "Why?" The Northern Region King smiled and said, "We are enemies because we have different standpoints. He wants to protect the chaotic universe, and I want the Northern Region to become better. I am not wrong, and he is not wrong either. Do you understand?" Zhen shook his head and said, "I don't really understand." The Northern Region King smiled and said, "Then you just need to remember one thing. He is our enemy." After saying this, he took Zhen's hand and said, "Let's go and see another old man who has not appeared for a long time. This old man is also a swordsman." Soon, the two disappeared into the distant starry sky. 2 hours later, the Northern Region King and Zhen came to a dense forest. Just as they arrived, an illusory sword suddenly appeared in front of the Northern Region King and Zhen. The Northern Region King smiled and said, "Old man, is this how you welcome me?" At this moment, an old man appeared in front of the Northern Region King. The old man wore a plain robe and had a head full of white hair. He held a sword in his hand. The Northern Region King said softly, "Long time no see." The old man glanced at Zhen, who was beside the Northern Region King. "Your daughter?" The Northern Region King nodded and looked at Zhen. "Greet Grandpa Lin." Zhen hurriedly bowed and said, "Grandpa Lin." The old man pointed and a small sword appeared in front of Zhen. It was very small, but it was crystal blue and very beautiful. Zhen did not hide his joy. The Northern Region King laughed and said, "Hurry up and thank Grandpa Lin." Zhen hurriedly said, "Thank Grandpa Lin." The Northern Region King gently rubbed Zhen's head and said, "Go and play." Zhen was very sensible and immediately retreated. The Northern Region King and the old man walked into the depths of the bamboo forest. On the way, the old man said, "I heard that the matter in the chaotic universe is not easy to deal with." The Northern Region King nodded. "There is a swordsman whose power is unfathomable." The old man frowned slightly. "Unfathomable?" The Northern Region King smiled. "For now, it is unfathomable." The old man asked, "How strong is she?" The Northern Region King said softly, "She used a sword to kill my Generalissimo from countless galaxies away." "What do you think?" Hearing this, the old man frowned. "She hasn't appeared in her true body?" The Northern Region King shook his head. "Not yet." The old man fell silent. The Northern Region King smiled. "I would like to ask you to lend me a hand." The old man said softly, "I'm afraid she is not easy to deal with." The Northern Region King nodded. "She is not a simple character. However, I must take over the chaotic universe, and I must obtain the item on Yi Xian." The old man said in a low voice, "Why not target Yi Xian directly?" The Northern Region King shook his head. "A super swordsman secretly seeking revenge. My Northern Region will not be able to withstand it. So, we must deal with her first. As for that Yi Xian, he is not a threat at the moment." The old man nodded. If that super swordsman wanted to take revenge on the northern region at all costs, the northern region would definitely suffer. However, if she did not fight to the death and ran away, then came back to fight again, she might even drag the northern region down. This was also the reason why the northern region king had temporarily given up on targeting Yi Xian. Once Yi Xian was dead, the northern region king would have nothing to worry about. Now that Yi Xian was alive, the northern region king could use Yi Xian to restrain the swordsman, making the northern region king hesitate. The old man looked at the northern region king. Let's go. The northern region king smiled. You agree just like that? The old man said softly, my swordsmanship has reached a bottleneck. If I don't have an opportunity, I won't be able to advance any further. For me, seeing another powerful swordsman might be an opportunity. The northern region king nodded. Then let's go. It should be about time. With that, the two turned and disappeared. In the chaotic universe. At this moment, 3 giant warships suddenly appeared in the chaotic universe. The 3 warships spanned across the entire universe. On each warship, there were tens of thousands of powerful soldiers from the northern region. These soldiers could be said to be the true elites of the northern region. But this time, the divine kingdom did not have an advantage in terms of both quantity and quality. In the starry sky, Shangguan Xian looked at the 3 warships in the distance. She frowned, her eyes full of worry. It could be said that this was the greatest crisis the divine kingdom had ever faced. If they lost this battle, forget about the divine kingdom, the entire chaotic universe would disappear without a trace. Could the divine kingdom stop them? The worry in Shangguan Xian's eyes grew stronger. At this moment, a man suddenly appeared in front of Shangguan Xian. The man was Yi Xian. Yi Xian looked at the 3 warships in the distance and said softly, don't panic. Shangguan Xian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. You see, I'm not panicking at all. I even want to laugh, haha. Shangguan Xian was about to speak when a starship suddenly flew over from the right. Soon, the starship stopped in front of Yi Xian. On the starship, a woman in a white dress walked out. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Your Excellency, are you Yi Xian? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The woman in the white dress smiled. You're the one who destroyed the Prairie Fire sect? Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. You're from the Sword Martial sect. The woman in the white dress nodded. I heard that my sect's founder's sword is in your hands. Yi Xian looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. Why? The woman in the white dress looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Please return it. At this moment, the executing heaven sword suddenly trembled violently. P.S. There are a few days every month when I don't want to write. I just want to sleep until I wake up naturally. But I'm poor. If one day, I also start to stop writing, then, please congratulate me. Because at that time, I may not be poor anymore. Chapter 685. Return the executing heaven sword? Yi Xian was taken aback. He hadn't expected the Sword Martial sect to ask him to return the sword. Yi Xian looked at the trembling executing heaven sword in his hand. What do you think? He naturally respected the executing heaven sword's opinion. He didn't want to force the executing heaven sword to do anything to him. Shaoling suddenly said, it said to cut her. Yi Xian was speechless. The executing heaven sword trembled, and a sword will slashed at the woman in white. The woman in white frowned. With a wave of her sleeve, the sword will was immediately forced to a stop. Yi Xian understood the executing heaven sword's intention. Yi Xian looked at the woman in white. This sword doesn't seem willing to go with you. The woman in white looked at Yi Xian. It belongs to the Sword Martial sect. Yi Xian waved the executing heaven sword in his hand. I don't think the words Sword Martial sect are written on it. The woman in white smiled. Looks like you don't want to return it. Yi Xian looked at the woman in white. I think you don't just want the sword, right? The woman in white smiled. You're smart. Yi Xian suddenly raised his hand and swung his sword. The woman in white narrowed her eyes and punched. Rumble. The space around them trembled. The woman in white retreated hundreds of meters, and Yi Xian also retreated dozens of meters. As soon as the woman in white stopped, her fist cracked, and blood spurted out. Yi Xian glanced at the woman in white. Get lost. The woman in white looked at Yi Xian. She didn't say anything. Suddenly, she disappeared. In an instant, 4 flying swords appeared around Yi Xian. Yi Xian frowned. He raised his hand and swung his sword. Boom! The 4 flying swords were shattered by his sword. At this time, the woman in white suddenly appeared in front of him and punched at his head. Yi Xian didn't dodge. He punched with his left hand. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the white-dressed woman retreated another 1,000 feet. After the lady in the white dress stopped, she stared at Yi Xian. God state physical body. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the white dress. He didn't say anything and disappeared. The woman in the white dress narrowed her eyes. With a soft cry, she slammed her palm forward. Boom! A powerful force swept out from her palm. However, as Yi Xian's sword slashed over, her power was instantly shattered. The white-dressed woman's pupils constricted. She tapped her right foot lightly and instantly retreated thousands of feet. As soon as she stopped, a flying sword appeared in front of her without warning. At this moment, a sword suddenly appeared in the white-dressed woman's hand. She raised her hand and stabbed. Boom! The flying sword was sent flying by her strike. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her, and at the same time, a sword was slashing towards her. The white-dressed woman's expression changed drastically. She was unable to dodge at all, so she could only block with her sword. Yi Xian's sword fell. Clang! The sound of something breaking resounded while the white-dressed woman appeared over 1 kilometer away. However, her entire right arm had vanished. She stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You've actually cultivated both the sword and martial arts to such an extent. You. Yi Xian suddenly said, cut the crap. I'm fucking fighting you, not talking about feelings. As soon as he finished speaking, he was already in front of the white-dressed woman, and the latter's pupils constricted to the size of needles. His sword descended. Hiss. The white-dressed woman was instantly slashed into 2 by Yi Xian. Blood sprayed, and it was an extremely bloody scene. Yi Xian turned around to look at the starship that the white-dressed woman was on. Don't send such a weak one. Thank you. Meanwhile, a voice resounded from within the starship. We underestimated you. Yi Xian suddenly roared furiously. Underestimated? I fucking killed so many people from the north, yet all of you still underestimate me? Did your brains get eaten by dogs? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed down with his sword. Hiss. A ray of light shot forward. Meanwhile, a figure suddenly flew out from within the starship. Bang! Yi Xian's ray of light was instantly blasted into pieces, and then Yi Xian suddenly vanished. At the same time, a furious shout resounded like a thunderclap. Slash! As soon as the voice resounded, a sword howl reverberated through the sky. Bang! The figure was blasted back by Yi Xian's attack, but he hadn't even stopped moving when Yi Xian suddenly charged swiftly over to him, and then he slashed down forcefully with his sword. Slash! The execution heaven's sword descended. Space was fragile like paper, and it was instantly torn apart. The expression of the man in front of Yi Xian changed when he sensed the energy contained within Yi Xian's sword. He flipped his right hand, and a golden shield suddenly appeared there. In the next moment, he held the shield in his right hand and pushed it forward. In an instant, a strand of golden light surged out from within the shield. Yi Xian's sword descended. Bang! The golden light was instantly blasted apart, and so was the golden shield in the man's hand. Bang! The man was also instantly sent flying. This time, he was sent flying thousands of feet away. However, he hadn't even stopped when Yi Xian suddenly vanished. The man's expression changed when he witnessed this scene, and he hurriedly moved 3 kilometers back in order to increase the distance between him and Yi Xian. Yi Xian immediately stopped when he noticed that the man refused to fight, and then he glanced at the man. "Fuck off." The man stared fixedly at Yi Xian and said, "Yi Xian, do you know that my sword martial school?" Yi Xian suddenly pointed a finger at the man and said, "I don't fucking know that your sword martial school is. Cut the crap. Either kill me or fuck off right now. Don't fucking waste your breath on me. I'm not interested in fighting a war of words with you." The man's expression was extremely unsightly. "How dare you look down on my sword martial school? You." Yi Xian suddenly spoke furiously, "How dare you still waste your breath? I'll fucking kill you." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure vanished. Hiss. A ray of sword light flashed through the battlefield. The man's expression changed drastically, and without hesitation, he turned around and ran. His speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he disappeared into the horizon. Yi Xian looked at the horizon, and there, a voice slowly came, "Yi Xian, my sword martial school will destroy you." Yi Xian's expression was cold. "What a piece of trash." At this time, Shengguan Xian walked to Yi Xian's side and whispered, "Why are you so angry?" Angry? Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. He was naturally angry. There was no end to these people. But he was very clear that the northern region and the sword martial school would not be the last. In the future, there would definitely be more people and more forces coming to find him. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian grinned, "If I don't die, I'll definitely go to the black-yellow great world and turn it upside down." After saying that, he turned around and left. Shengguan Xian glanced at Yi Xian. She knew that Yi Xian couldn't stand the repeated harassment from these fellows from the black-yellow great world. The Divine Hall. Yi Xian sat on the throne, and all the experts of the Divine Nation were below him. All the top experts of the Divine Nation were here. Yi Xian glanced at them and said, "All of you should be aware of what we're facing now. I won't hide it from all of you. Our strength is inferior to the northern region, and it can even be said that there's a huge gap between us. As for the king of the northern region, I've met him once, and he's very strong. As for how many other experts there are in the northern region, I don't know. It can be said that our chances of winning are very slim." All of them fell silent. Yi Xian stood up, "But we have no choice. Of course, none of you here are weak, and the northern region will definitely not refuse if you choose to surrender. Now, anyone who wants to leave can leave, and I won't stop you." All of them glanced at each other when they heard this. Surrender? Actually, many of them had such thoughts. Because after they witnessed the true strength of the northern region, none of them felt that the chaotic universe could go against the northern region. It was impossible because the gap in strength was too huge. When Yi Xian saw that no one moved, he said, "I won't stop those who leave now, but I'll definitely kill anyone who dares to surrender when the two armies enter into battle." Meanwhile, an old man walked forward, and he bowed slightly to Yi Xian, "Divine Master. My Green Mountain sect wishes to leave. However, we won't surrender to the northern region. We just want to leave this place." Yi Xian's face was expressionless. Permitted. The old man was delighted when he heard this, and he hurriedly said, "Thank you, Divine Master." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Meanwhile, a dark guard appeared in front of the old man. Yi Xian waved his right hand, and the dark guard vanished. The sect master of Green Mountain sect instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this, and then he quickly vanished from the hall. Seeing that the Tsangshan sect lord had left safely, the hall was silent for a moment before another middle-aged man walked out. The middle-aged man bowed to Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, "You don't have to say anything. Leave." The middle-aged man glanced at Yi Xian before he left. Just like that, it didn't take long for over 20 people to leave the hall, and all of them represented over 20 top-rate powers. Even though some had left, there were still quite a few who stayed behind. Meanwhile, Elder Wen suddenly walked over to Yi Xian and cupped his fists. Divine Master, letting them leave like this will probably affect their morale. Moreover, they've received a favor from the Divine Kingdom. Now that the Divine Kingdom is in trouble, they have the responsibility to resist the Black Origin world with us. Yi Xian smiled. Isn't it better for them to leave now? Elder Wen looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said softly, if they leave now, I won't be stabbed in the back by them. If they don't leave and we fight the Black Origin world in the future, these people may take our lives. As he spoke, he turned to look at Shangguan Xian. Remember all the sects and powers that choose to leave. Shangguan Xian nodded. I already have them in my heart. Yi Xian nodded. He walked to the door of the hall and looked up at the horizon. At the horizon, in the starry sky, a middle-aged man was looking down at him. The king of the northern region. This time, it wasn't a clone, but his main body. The main body had arrived. Everyone was looking at the king of the northern region. The king of the northern region looked at Yi Xian and smiled. You said you'd rather die standing than live kneeling. Don't worry, you'll get what you want. As soon as he finished speaking, he pressed his right hand down lightly. In an instant, countless black airflows floated down from the chaotic universe. As these black airflows appeared, the spiritual energy of the chaotic universe immediately dissipated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Everyone's expressions changed drastically when they sensed this scene. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in the air. Chapter 686. The newcomer was none other than Tendo. The Heaven Origin world's plundering of the chaotic universe's energy had undoubtedly harmed Tendo the most. Because she was a spirit of the chaotic universe, and the energy of the chaotic universe was her foundation. Tendo's expression gradually turned ferocious as she gazed at the Northern Territory King. It didn't take long for countless strands of energy to converge towards her. The Northern Territory King gazed at Tendo and chuckled, a puny Tendo isn't qualified to attack me. He waved his right hand as soon as he finished speaking. Bang! A powerful aura swept towards Tendo. Tendo roared furiously, and then she pressed her palms together and pressed them forward. Rumble. A wave of spiritual energy surged towards the Northern Region King's aura. However, as soon as the two collided, the Heavenly Tao's spiritual energy instantly shattered. At the same time, the Heavenly Tao was forced back nearly 10,000 feet. The Northern Territory King glanced at Tendo, and then he flicked his sleeve. Bang! The space here instantly became illusory. In the distance, Tiandao's pupils suddenly shrank. This power was so strong that it was not something she could resist. And at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her. Yi Xian unsheathed his sword and slashed. Hiss! A strand of sword light flashed through the battlefield. In the distance, the pressure released by the Northern Region King was directly split into two by Yi Xian's sword, but Yi Xian and Tiandao were forced to retreat again and again. This time, the two retreated another 10,000 feet. The experts of the Divine Kingdoms had unsightly expressions on their faces when they witnessed this scene. The Northern Territory King glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. Even in the Heaven Origin world, there aren't more than 10 people in the younger generation who can withstand an attack from me. Yi Xian smiled. Looks like you're determined to win this time. The Northern Territory King nodded. I'm determined to win. This is my last chance. If I fail, then my Northern Territory will lose the chaotic universe for good. Yi Xian said softly, so you're saying that some other organizations are eyeing our chaos verse as well? The king of the Northern region laughed. Yes, because there are too many tempting things here. However, this area was discovered by the Northern region, so we have the right to choose first. Yi Xian glanced around. The black energy streams were still furiously devouring the spiritual energy of the chaos verse. Yi Xian looked at the Tendo. Is there any way to stop it? Tendo shook his head. There's no other way. Yi Xian fell silent. At this time, Yu's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. You can stop it. Yi Xian was taken aback. I can. How do we stop it? You said, activate the spatial Dao law and let it absorb these things. Yi Xian asked, can I? You said, won't you know if you try? When he heard this, Yi Xian hurriedly activated the spatial Dao law. Soon, countless cracks appeared in the space around them, and the black spiritual energy that permeated the surroundings was directly absorbed into these cracks. Opposite Yi Xian, the king of the northern region frowned. This is the spatial Dao law. Yi Xian looked at the king of the northern region. You know the spatial Dao law. The king of the northern region glanced at Yi Xian, and his gaze gradually became slightly solemn. This isn't the fourth-dimensional Dao law, but the fifth-dimensional Dao law. At this point, his expression became even more solemn. It seems that this king has still underestimated you. Yi Xian looked at the king of the northern region and asked inwardly, Miss Yu, can you beat this fellow? Yu said, no. Yi Xian was taken aback, and then he said, Miss Yu, you're from the fifth dimension. Yu said indifferently, does the fifth dimension represent invincibility? Yi Xian was speechless. Yu said again, this person in front of you is stronger than you think. The fellow on the sixth floor should be able to deal with this person in front of you. However, he seems to be in a deep sleep. Deep sleep? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, why is he in a deep sleep? Yu said, who knows? Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, a white light suddenly appeared in the distant sky, and the white light shot over like a meteor. The king of the northern region glanced at the white light and did not say anything. Soon, the white light landed in front of Yi Xian. When the white light dissipated, a young man in his 20s appeared. He stood ramrod straight and held a spear in his hand. Seeing this young man, the king of the northern region frowned slightly. He did not know this young man. The young man's gaze fell on Yi Xian. You're Yi Xian? Yi Xian said with a smile, who are you? The young man did not answer Yi Xian. He looked at the king of the northern region and bowed slightly. This humble one is Wang Feng of the Sword Martial Sect. Greetings, senior. The Sword Martial Sect. The king of the northern region sized Wang Feng up. Your Sword Martial Sect seems to have broken the rules. Wang Feng bowed again. This junior has come here to fight with Yi Xian. Nothing else. Fight with Yi Xian. The king of the northern region smiled. Are you sure? Wang Feng nodded. Yes. The king of the northern region nodded. Then fight with him. Wang Feng bowed respectfully. He turned to look at Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian. Please enlighten me. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly dashed forward and thrust his sword and spear forward. The spear pierced through heaven and earth like a bolt of lightning. Yi Xian did not let his guard down. He tapped his right foot lightly and gathered the power of the earth around him. The next moment, he slashed with his sword. There was no technique involved. It was just a simple sword strike. The sword descended. Boom! Wang Feng's spear instantly exploded, and Wang Feng was forced back several hundred meters. However, Yi Xian was also forced back several hundred meters. Wang Feng looked down at his own palm. It had been completely shattered. After a moment of silence, he looked up at the nearby executioner Heaven's sword in Yi Xian's hand. That sword of yours is quite powerful. Yi Xian said calmly, are you trying to accuse me of using my sword to bully others? Wang Feng looked at Yi Xian. That sword of yours belongs to the founder of the Sword Martial Sect. Yi Xian laughed. Are you joking with me? Wang Feng looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, I heard that you were the #1 swordsman of the Chaos Verse back in the Xianhuang world. Could it be that you relied on this sword to become the #1 swordsman? Yi Xian smiled. What realm are you at now? Wang Feng said, the peak of the Immortal realm. Yi Xian nodded. I'm only at the Peerless realm. I'm still far from your realm. How about this? I won't use this sword, and you suppress your realm to the peerless realm. We'll have a fair fight. What do you think? Wang Feng's expression turned ugly. How can you only be at the peerless realm? Yi Xian smiled. If you don't believe me, you can ask the king of the northern region next to you. Wang Feng looked at the king of the northern region. The latter said calmly, he is indeed at the peerless realm. He's several realms below you. Wang Feng's expression turned even uglier. Yi Xian smiled. What do you think? I won't use this divine weapon. You suppress your realm. We'll have a fair fight. No one will bully the other. Wang Feng stared at Yi Xian without saying anything. Yi Xian suddenly sneered. What? You don't want a fair fight? As soon as he finished speaking, he dashed out. Swish. A sword light tore through space. Wang Feng's expression changed drastically. He suddenly pointed his finger forward like a spear. Boom! A powerful spear aura exploded from his fingertip. However, as Yi Xian's sword slashed down, his spear aura disappeared without a trace. At the same time, his entire palm was cut off by Yi Xian's sword. Wang Feng was shocked and retreated nearly 1,000 feet. Yi Xian did not chase after him. He glanced at Wang Feng. If I'm not wrong, you came by yourself, right? Wang Feng looked at Yi Xian with an extremely gloomy expression. Yi Xian said calmly, Scram. Wang Feng looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, do you dare to put down the sword in your hand and fight me? Yi Xian smiled. Do you dare to suppress your realm? Wang Feng gazed silently at Yi Xian. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. What the hell? So the fairness you speak of is me sacrificing my advantage to be strong against you? How can you be so shameless? Wang Feng was about to speak when the northern region king spoke abruptly. Don't embarrass your sword martial school. Wang Feng gazed at the northern region king. Senior. The northern region king shook his head. Send the number 1 genius of your sword martial school. Perhaps he might be able to fight him. Wang Feng fell silent for a moment, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. I can't accept losing to you. Yi Xian suddenly vanished. This time, he didn't use his sword, and he just punched Wang Feng. Burial fist. As soon as this punch was launched, the space in an area of over 100 kilometers instantly collapsed. Wang Feng's expression instantly changed when he sensed the formidable strength contained within Yi Xian's punch. He stomped his right foot on the ground, and then an illusory spear suddenly shot out from the center of his forehead. Rumble. An explosion instantly resounded in the starry sky, and then Wang Feng's figure was blasted flying. As he flew, his body started to crack inch by inch. When Wang Feng finally stopped, only his soul was left. Wang Feng gazed at Yi Xian with slight disbelief. You. What sort of fist technique is that? Yi Xian spoke indifferently. I created it myself, burial fist. Wang Feng's expression suddenly became slightly ferocious. Created it yourself? How could that be possible? How could you have possibly created such a formidable fist technique? Yi Xian's face was emotionless. I'm an extraordinary genius. I can't do it. Wang Feng stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Don't get arrogant. My sword martial school. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly raised his sword. Soul-suppressing sword. In an instant, soul-suppressing sword entered the center of Wang Feng's forehead. Wang Feng's eyes opened wide, and his soul grew more and more illusory. It didn't take long for him to vanish completely. Yi Xian gazed at the northern region king. The northern region king spoke softly, he died a little unwillingly. Yi Xian smiled. Are all the younger generation of the Sky-Earth world so brainless? The northern region king shook his head. He was about to speak, but he suddenly turned around. Meanwhile, a voice resounded in front of him. "I've found her." The Northern Region King's eyes narrowed slightly. He fell silent for a moment before he said, "Tell her to come here. Tell her that if she doesn't come, then Yi Xian will definitely die today." Yi Xian was speechless. "P.S. It's Chinese Valentine's Day today. I'm a little busy. A few dates. How annoying." Chapter 687. At this moment, Yi Xian finally understood. The reason the Northern Region King hadn't made a move against him was because he wanted to use Chen Shi to draw the woman out. When he thought up to here, Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "It seems like I've been constantly causing trouble for the woman." As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly asked softly, "Miss Yu, why has she been constantly helping me?" Yu fell silent. Yi Xian laughed bitterly. "You don't know?" Yu said, "Your relationship with her might not be simple." "Relationship?" Yi Xian frowned slightly, "But I've never met her in the past." Yu said, "I'm talking about my previous life." "My previous life?" Yi Xian was stunned. A short moment later, Yi Xian laughed bitterly as well. Because he couldn't think of any other reason besides that. My previous life? Yi Xian's brows knit together even more tightly. What sort of person was I in my previous life? Yu continued, "You can ask her when you see her later." Obviously, Yu was curious about Yi Xian's past life as well. It was utterly impossible for an expert like the woman to help Yi Xian for no reason. So there was only a single explanation why she cared so much about Yi Xian, and it was that she was definitely related to Yi Xian's past life. Yi Xian nodded, "I'll have to ask her when I see her later." As he spoke, he looked up into the sky. Meanwhile, an enormous screen of light had appeared in front of the Northern Region King, and there was a boundless starry sky within the screen. The scene within the screen of light was still changing, and it seemed to be searching for the woman in a simple dress. Yi Xian gazed at the screen with slight anticipation. He hadn't expected that he would be able to see the woman again so soon. The Northern Region King was gazing at the screen of light as well, and his expression was very calm. Right at this moment, a woman in a simple dress appeared within the screen of light. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings became solemn when they saw this woman in a plain dress. The experts of the Divine Kingdom were naturally no strangers to the plain-dressed woman. She hadn't even appeared in the Chaos Verse that day. She had been able to insta-kill 2 supreme experts of the North from countless stellar regions away. Just how strong was this plainly dressed woman? This was what everyone was thinking at this moment. At this moment, the woman in the plain dress was not walking. She was sitting in the starry sky with a chessboard placed before her. The woman in the plain dress held the white one. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at the woman in a simple dress. The woman in the plain dress just sat there. Her dress was spotless and her long hair was draped behind her. The tail of her hair was tied by a ribbon and swayed gently in the wind. Her appearance was peerless. All along, everyone's attention had been focused on the strength of the plain-clothed woman and neglected her beauty. In fact, her beauty was also very high and could be said to be rare in the world. Of course, the most important thing was her temperament. She sat there without saying a word, and there was an indescribable and special temperament about her. At this moment, the woman in the plain dress suddenly picked up a chess piece and placed it on the chessboard. As soon as she placed it down, a black chess piece suddenly appeared on the chessboard. A game of chess. The king of the Northern Region gazed at the woman in the plain dress silently. A middle-aged man and an old swordsman stood by his side. They were the Night King and Elder Lin. Both of them were looking at the woman in the plain dress with solemn expressions in their eyes. Within the prison pagoda, Yu and Yanjia were looking at the woman in the plain dress as well. Yu said solemnly, "What is she doing?" Yanjia replied, "Playing chess." Yu asked, "Who is playing chess with her?" Yanjia shook his head. Yu looked at the woman in the plain dress and spoke solemnly, "If such a figure exists in the 4th dimension, then the 5th dimension." Yanjia fell silent. Yu continued, I think that the core of all this might be Yi Xian. That fellow is very unusual. Yinjia looked at it. You said solemnly, I have a feeling that something is against that kid, and that woman in the plain dress is helping that guy block a disaster, a great disaster. Yinjia nodded. He is indeed not simple. You looked outside and said softly, forget about him. Anyway, the more special he is, the better it is for us. If he is not special, we won't be able to suppress this broken pagoda in the future. Yinjia smiled. I think this broken pagoda is still okay now. You said softly, have you forgotten what it used to look like? Hearing this, Yinjia fell silent. The prison pagoda in the past was not a normal kind of madness. Thinking of this, Yinjia said softly, I hope that Xiao Ta does not truly regain his consciousness, outside the prison pagoda. In the light screen, the woman in the plain dress was still playing chess. The king of the northern region looked at the woman in the plain dress. Are you going to ignore us? The woman did not reply. The king of the northern region smiled. It seems that you do not care about this Yi Xian's life. Yi Xian. The woman in the plain dress, who was about to place a chess piece, paused. She turned her head and looked in the direction where the king of the northern region and the others were. The woman in the plain dress looked at the king of the northern region indifferently. Are you threatening me? The king of the northern region smiled. Yes. The woman in the plain dress stood up and looked at the king of the northern region. The king of the northern region looked at the woman in the plain dress. Please come out and fight. Fight. The woman in the plain dress suddenly looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian lowered his head slightly. Sorry, I caused you trouble again. The woman in the plain dress looked at Yi Xian. This is not trouble. These people are weaker than ants. They are not qualified to cause me trouble. Hearing this, the king of the northern region narrowed his eyes. Weaker than ants? I have to say, this is the funniest joke I have ever heard in my life. The woman in the plain dress ignored the king of the northern region. She looked at Yi Xian and said softly, I really hope that you can face everything by yourself, but I know that you, who have that pagoda, are destined to face many things that you should not face at your age. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. There are a lot of enemies, and they are getting stronger. The woman in the plain dress smiled. Seeing her smile, Yi Xian was stunned. This was the first time he saw the woman in the plain dress smile. In his memory, this woman in the plain dress had never smiled before. The woman in the plain dress said softly, in life, you need to experience these tribulations. Just like a sword, if it is not tempered thousands of times, it will not become a sharp sword. The tribulations you are experiencing now, one day in the future, you will be grateful for these tribulations. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. I am not afraid of tribulations. I am afraid that I will be accidentally killed by others. The woman in the plain dress smiled. Then work hard to become stronger. Only with great strength can you truly laugh at the world. Yi Xian looked at the woman in the plain dress. Why are you helping me? Did I know you in my previous life? Why did the woman in the plain dress help him? This was what he was most curious about. Ever since he met the woman in the plain dress, he could feel that the woman in the plain dress treated him differently. And he was very clear that the woman in the plain dress would not do this for no reason. There was only one explanation, and that was that the woman in the plain dress had something to do with him in his previous life. But what was the relationship between them? This made him very curious. The woman in the plain dress looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. She seemed to be in deep thought. Yi Xian said, Can't you tell me? The woman in the plain dress shook her head. It is not that I can't tell you, but it is meaningless to tell you now. When you meet me in the future, you will know many things. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then asked again, Where are you now? The woman in the plain dress said softly, A very far place. Yi Xian was about to speak, but at this time, the king of the northern region, who was not far away, suddenly smiled and said, Your Excellency, are you really not going to show up and fight? The woman in the plain dress turned to look at the king of the northern region. You want to fight me? The king of the northern region laughed. Could it be that I am not qualified? The woman in the plain dress turned to look at Yi Xian. Kill someone, or kill the world? Yi Xian was stunned. Kill someone? Or kill the world? Yi Xian's brain short-circuited. Chapter 688. Insta-kill him? Insta-kill the entire world? Yi Xian didn't quite understand what she meant, but it didn't take long for him to understand. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, all the experts in the northern region above the Emperor realm. Make them disappear. Is that all right? She nodded. Yes. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly gazed at the northern region king. You aren't qualified to challenge me. The northern region king smiled. Is that so? She suddenly stretched out her right hand. Sword. As soon as her voice resounded. A sword howl suddenly resounded in the starry sky of the chaotic universe, and then a sword suddenly slashed down from the sky. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw this sword because it was the same sword that had been at the top of the pagoda. It was slashing straight towards the northern region king. The northern region king's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene. At this moment, he sensed the aura of death. The northern region king didn't dare act carelessly in the slightest. He suddenly clenched his fists tightly, and a powerful aura instantly swept out from within him. The space in an area of over 100 kilometers instantly started seething. The expressions of Yi Xian and the others instantly turned solemn when they witnessed this scene. The northern region king's strength was extraordinary. Meanwhile, the woman's sword had arrived above the northern region king's head. The northern region king revealed a savage smile as he suddenly smashed his fists upwards. Rumble. A powerful pressure instantly shook everyone to the point of retreating explosively. Meanwhile, the woman's sword descended. Hiss. The sound of something slicing resounded. Everyone watched as the sword descended straight down, and it descended directly from the northern region king's head to the ground. The surroundings were deathly silent. He didn't block it. The northern region king's eyes gradually became slightly dazed, and it didn't take long for his body to start dissipating bit by bit. The expressions of everyone here became extremely solemn when they witnessed this scene. She instantly killed the northern region king with a single attack. Yi Xian was stunned as well. He knew that the woman was very strong, and he knew that she would definitely win. But he hadn't imagined that she would actually kill the northern region king with a single attack. A single attack. That was the northern region king of the Sky-Earth world. He wasn't even able to resist a single attack. The people around the king of the northern region were completely petrified. His king couldn't even take a single strike. The northern region king looked at the woman in the plain dress. How is this possible? The plain-dressed woman glared at the northern region king coldly. She didn't say anything, but the way she looked at him was as though she was looking at an ant. Soon, the lady's gaze landed on the Night King and the old swordsman beside the northern region king. The old swordsman suddenly took a step forward. The sword in his hand suddenly trembled violently, and a surge of intense sword into the sky. The old man looked at the plain-dressed woman without any fear in his eyes. Please enlighten me. The plainly dressed woman waved her hand. A ray of sword light flashed through the battlefield. Chi! A tearing sound resounded. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. Buzz! The sword cry shook the heavens and earth. But soon, the battlefield became calm again, and a head slowly fell from the sky. It was the old man's head. It was an instant kill. The plain-dressed woman's face was expressionless. She glanced at the three enormous ships, and then she pointed with a finger. The swords suddenly flew out, and then numerous shrill cries resounded incessantly from the three ships. In less than 3 breaths of time, the heads of all the experts at the Imperial Emperor realm and above had fallen to the ground. The scalps of the experts from the divine kingdoms went numb when they witnessed this scene. She killed experts at the Imperial Emperor realm and Godly realm like chickens. Yi Xian shuddered with fear as well. This plain-dressed woman is extraordinarily ferocious. Meanwhile, the plain-dressed woman's gaze descended onto the Night King. The Night King remained silent. He didn't attack as well because it was pointless. On the other hand, the Northern Region King had become completely illusory, and he was about to vanish from this world for good. The plain-dressed woman gazed at the Night King. "Where's the Northern Region King?" The Night King hesitated for a moment, and then he pointed to the right. The plain-dressed woman gazed at the Northern Region King who hadn't completely vanished. "Watch carefully." As soon as she finished speaking, she pointed with a finger. "Sword, go." The plain-dressed woman's sword suddenly transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the distant starry sky. Everyone looked at the sword. The Northern Region King who hadn't completely vanished looked at the plain-dressed woman. "What are you going to do?" The plain-dressed woman remained expressionless and didn't speak. It didn't take long for the sword to arrive at the Northern Region King's territory. The expressions of all the experts in the Northern Region King's territory changed drastically when the sword appeared in the Northern Region King's territory, and countless people raised their heads to look at the sky above the capital city of the Northern Region. In the sky above the city, the sword slowly descended. As the sword fell, the royal city of the Northern Region began to crumble inch by inch. The Northern Region King's expression changed drastically. What are you going to do?" The plain-dressed woman glanced at the Northern Region King, and then she turned to look at Yi Xian. "I'll show you a sword technique that descends from the sky." As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand and pressed it down lightly. The sword suddenly descended from the sky above the capital city of the Northern Region. Bang! The entire capital city of the Northern Region was instantly reduced to ashes. At the same time, countless screams rang out. Within the city, countless rays of sword chi slaughtered the experts at the Great Emperor Realm and above in a frenzy. These people couldn't resist the sword chi at all. It was a massacre. In a short while, the entire capital city of the Northern Region was completely reduced to ashes. Many people in the city had already fled, but not a single expert at the Great Emperor Realm or above had managed to escape. And that wasn't the end. The plain-dressed woman's sword suddenly trembled violently, and then countless rays of sword chi shot towards the sky. Wherever these rays of sword chi passed, experts at the Great Emperor Realm and above were all killed. A massacre. It was a complete massacre. In the starry sky of the chaotic universe, the Northern Region King's mind went blank as he looked at the scene. He knew that at this moment, the Northern Region had completely disappeared from the Xuanhuan Great World. This was because all the experts at the Great Emperor Realm and above had been killed by this plain-dressed woman. Although she hadn't completely annihilated everyone in the Northern Region, the Northern Region had now become an unrated force. The Northern Region King looked at the plain-dressed woman. "Who are you?" Now, he only wanted to know who this plain-dressed woman was. He knew that he had provoked someone he shouldn't have. But who was this person? Logically speaking, he knew all the people of this level, but among the top experts of the Xuanhuan Great World, there was no one named this plain-dressed woman. The plain-dressed woman ignored the Northern Region King. With a wave of her right hand, the sword in the Northern Region suddenly flew back to the starry sky of the chaotic universe. At this moment, the Northern Region King completely disappeared. In the last moment of his disappearance, he was looking at the plain-dressed woman. The plain-dressed woman looked at the Night King. The Night King said in a low voice, "I can't beat you." He was once one of the most monstrous people in the Northern Region, and he had never admitted defeat to anyone in his life. But at this moment, he decisively admitted defeat. If there was a god in the world, then this plain-dressed woman before him was a god. The plain-dressed woman was expressionless. "Do you want to live?" The Night King nodded. "Yes." The plain-dressed woman suddenly pointed with her fingers, and a ray of sword light directly pierced the Night King's forehead. But the next moment, the ray of sword light flew out and finally landed in front of Yi Xian. There was even a strand of black gas coiling around the ray of sword light. The plain-dressed woman turned to look at Yi Xian, and her eyes were no longer as indifferent as before. "This is his soul. You can control his life and death by controlling this soul." Yi Xian knew that the plain-dressed woman had found a goon for him. Yi Xian didn't refuse, and he immediately put away the ray of sword light. At the same time, he put away the Northern Region King's spatial ring as well. When he glanced at its contents, Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh. I'm rich. As if he'd thought of something, he gazed at the plain-dressed woman. The plain-dressed woman waved her right hand, and her sword descended in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian asked, "What's this?" The plain-dressed woman said, "I'll leave this sword with you, but you're still unable to control it right now. I've hidden 3 strands of sword energy within it, and you can use it 3 times. You can use it in times of danger." Yi Xian was delighted when he heard this, and he hurriedly put the sword away before he gazed at the plain-dressed woman. "Are you leaving?" The plain-dressed woman nodded. "I still have some things to do." As she spoke, she glanced at Yi Xian with a rather complicated expression. "Your current strength isn't sufficient to protect yourself, and I can't be by your side at all times. So, you have to be careful at all times in the future." Yi Xian nodded. "I will." The plain-dressed woman nodded lightly. "Take good care of yourself." As soon as she finished speaking, the screen of light in front of Yi Xian gradually turned illusory. Yi Xian knew that she was about to leave. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Where should I go to look for you in the future?" The plain-dressed woman gazed at Yi Xian. "Wait until you're strong enough." As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished completely. "She's gone." Yi Xian was silent. Once the plain-dressed woman left, he didn't know when they would meet again. After a while, Yi Xian shook his head, no longer thinking about this problem. He looked at the soldiers of the northern region in the distance. Just now, the plain-dressed woman had only attacked the experts of Emperor Realm and above, so these soldiers were still alive. Seeing Yi Xian's gaze, the soldiers' expressions changed, and they became incomparably vigilant. Yi Xian walked in front of the soldiers. "You have 2 choices, surrender, or die." "Surrender?" At this time, a general walked out, and he stared at Yi Xian. "We are from the northern region." Yi Xian suddenly raised his hand and swung his sword. Chi! The general's head flew off. Yi Xian glanced at the crowd. "Is there anyone else with a backbone? Come out, I'll cut off his bones." The group of soldiers looked at Yi Xian, but didn't speak. Yi Xian continued, "Think about your families. If you all die here, what will happen to them?" The crowd fell silent. Yi Xian continued, "If you surrender to me, I can promise you that I won't touch your families, and I won't massacre the northern region." The crowd was still silent. Yi Xian suddenly roared, "I don't have any patience." As soon as his voice fell, a sword's hum soared to the sky. At this time, a soldier of the northern region walked out, and he looked at Yi Xian. "You won't massacre the northern region?" Yi Xian was expressionless. "I'll keep my word." The soldier immediately knelt on one knee. "I'm willing to follow you." Soon, more and more soldiers knelt. In the distant starry sky, the plain-dressed woman sat in front of a chessboard. After an unknown amount of time, the plain-dressed woman suddenly stood up, and she looked into the distant starry sky. "If he lives, you will live. If he dies, your 5th dimension will die. P.S. Go to Beijing today. Attend an event at the Beijing Art Creation International Convention and Exhibition Center the day after tomorrow, which is 2 p.m. on the 10th. Are there any friends from Beijing coming over to play? There should be a lot of gods here tomorrow. You can come over to see me. If there are any of my readers here, we can communicate. I can do any pose. If there aren't, may I ask, what's the usual rate for celebrities to ask their fans and actors to show off? How much for an hour? Do you know anyone? Introduce me to someone." At this point, he suddenly felt a little sad. After so many years, he still didn't have many loyal fans. If he had gone to mine coal back then, he might have become a coal boss. Chapter 689. The Chaotic Universe. Order City. Within the Divine Hall, Yi Xian sat on the throne. All the experts of the divine nation stood before him. At this moment, everyone within the hall was brimming with smiles. They'd won. The divine nation had won. Not only had they won, but they'd even absorbed the armies of the Northern Territory. It could be said that the divine nation was unprecedentedly powerful. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Everyone, prepare yourselves. We're marching into the Northern Territory." They were marching into the Northern Territory. Everyone here was stunned when they heard this. Shangguan Xian was slightly stunned as well. She hadn't expected Yi Xian to have such thoughts. Yi Xian spoke softly, "Everyone, the Dark Origin world won't let the matter rest." Meanwhile, Shangguan Xian spoke solemnly, "With that senior here, would the Dark Origin world dare to attack us?" The woman in a plain dress. At this moment, the strength that the woman in a simple dress revealed was truly too terrifying. Yi Xian shook his head, "We can't place all our hopes on her." The woman in a plain dress was sufficiently strong, and her attack had absolutely awed the entire Dark Origin world. However, he didn't think that it could frighten the Dark Origin world. After all, it was the strongest place in the entire fourth dimension. At most, the Dark Origin world would fear the woman in a plain dress. Only those who had faced the plainly dressed woman would know how terrifying she was. Moreover, his intuition told him that the Dark Origin world would definitely not give up just like that. Moreover, he didn't want to place all his hopes on the woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian continued, "Everyone, we must march into the Northern Territory. Now that all the high-end forces in the Northern Territory have been annihilated, it's our opportunity. Only then can we set the battlefield in the Dark Origin world and not the chaotic world." Meanwhile, Elder One spoke solemnly, "The Dark Origin world is over there. We'll probably run into a lot of trouble if we head there just like that." Yi Xian smiled, "Why would we be afraid of trouble? Instead of waiting here for death, I'd rather take the initiative to attack. Moreover, the Northern Territory is so huge. Aren't you tempted by it?" Some of the people here were tempted when they heard this. The Northern Territory. That was the Xianhuang Great World. If they could gain a foothold there, it would bring them endless benefits. At this moment, an old man walked out. "My Lin family is willing to follow the Divine Master to the Black-Yellow Great World." Soon, more and more people came forward. In the end, almost everyone was willing to follow Yi Xian to the Black-Yellow Great World. Benefits were the most motivating factor. Yi Xian nodded and said, "Everyone, prepare yourselves. We'll be heading to the Northern Territory of the Sky-Earth world in 2 days." With that, he got up and left. Inside the hall, everyone was still discussing. Yi Xian returned to his room, sat down, and took out the Northern Region King's storage ring. There weren't many things in the storage ring, but they were all of the highest quality. Among them, there were a total of 6 God Realm treasures, and 2 of them were swords. Although these 2 swords were not as good as his Executing Heaven sword and Soul Suppressing sword, they were still top-notch swords. He could keep it and devour it. Because in terms of swords, he already had the Executing Heaven sword and Soul Suppressing sword. Moreover, there was now the addition of the plain-dressed woman's sword. He didn't lack swords to use, but he lacked swords that he could absorb. Apart from these 6 God Realm treasures, there was also an End Realm treasure. An End Realm treasure. One must know that the soul-suppressing sword was just at the End Realm. It was armor, a golden armor that gave off a golden glow. Qingsheng, Yi family, Ancestral Hall. Ancestor, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian will be removed from the position of prince and Yi Lang will take over. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a teen who had a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi Manor. "Why?" Just at this moment, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling and she was Yi Xian's sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian, she didn't care about her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yiling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yiling bowed towards the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the prince, so why did you trash him for no reason? The elder looked coldly at Yiling. This is a family matter, so why are you interrupting? Leave. Yiling was obviously afraid and didn't dare to look at the elder, but she didn't leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders and said, Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan. He's fighting for the family right now, and we don't even know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the family is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped of his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi manor rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she didn't cry. She just clutched her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, Subordinate Jianghu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. You can be my personal guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate will go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you. Yi Lang nodded, Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Do not hold back. Understood. Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, all the elders frowned. The great elder's eyes narrowed, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, Your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Peng! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, why are you butting in? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times, as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply, I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you. Yi Lang nodded, Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder squinted his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu, and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 690. Shangguan Xian, took Yi Xian to the temple. Inside the temple, Yi Xian saw the sects and families that had left before. These people had all chosen to leave on their own accord. Seeing Yi Xian, these people's faces were a little unnatural. Yi Xian looked at the crowd and said with a smile, "Why did you come back?" At this time, an old man stood out. This person was the first to propose to leave, the sect master of Tsangshan sect, Lin Sangxing. Yi Xian had a deep impression of this old man, because he was the first to propose to leave. Lin Sangxing bowed slightly to Yi Xian, "Divine Lord, we thought about it again and again, and decided to come back." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Why?" Lin Sangxing said in a deep voice, "This is our home." Speaking of this, he looked at Yi Xian. "Moreover, now that the chaotic universe is in a desperate situation, we thought about it again and again, and still feel that we should not leave at this time, so we decided to come back and face everything with the chaotic universe." Haha. Yi Xian suddenly laughed. He looked at Shangguan Xian. People say that I, Yi Xian, am thick-skinned, but now in front of sect master Lin, I feel that my face is really too thin." Lin Sangxing said in a deep voice, "Divine Lord, we are sincere." Yi Xian suddenly waved his hand, interrupting Lin Sangxing. "Sect master Lin, why didn't you come back when the northern army came?" Hearing this, Lin Sangxing's face became a little ugly. Yi Xian looked at Lin Sangxing and others. "Sect master Lin, Yi Xian, have no grievances with you. Why do you want to rub my intelligence on the ground?" Speaking of this, his face suddenly became cold. "Or, do I look stupid?" Hearing this, Lin Sangxing and others' face changed. Lin Sangxing, the leader, hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Divine Lord, we absolutely did not mean that." He hesitated for a moment as he spoke, and then he said, We know our mistakes. We really shouldn't have left when the divine kingdom is in danger. Please give us a chance to turn over a new leaf." Yi Xian looked at Lin Sangxing. "If we can't go through thick and thin together, how can we share prosperity?" Hearing this, Lin Sangxing's face instantly turned pale. At this moment, Yi Xian started walking towards the exit. When he arrived at the entrance to the hall, he suddenly stopped and said, "Xian, make them immediately leave the chaos verse. Otherwise, treat them as enemies." With that, he disappeared into the distance. Shangguan Xian's expression was quite strange, because Yi Xian's way of addressing her was different from before. "Xian." After a while, Shangguan Xian looked at Lin Sangxing and the others. "Secret guards, send them away." With that, more than 20 shadow guards followed behind Lin Sangxing and the others. Seeing this scene, the faces of Lin Sangxing and others suddenly became extremely ugly. Shangguan Xian didn't care about the crowd. She left the main hall. Just as Yi Xian said, "If we can't go through thick and thin together, how can we share prosperity?" Yi Xian returned to Divine Martial Arts City. In a room, Bei Zhe, Mo Yinqi, and Ji Anji were in the room. The three of them were looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian waved his right hand, and a pile of treasures appeared in front of the three of them. The lowest treasure was at the divine state level. Mo Yinchi looked at Yi Xian. Bandit Yi, what are you doing? Yi Xian smiled and said, choose one of each. Mo Yinchi shook his head, I don't want it. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yinchi, why? Mo Yinchi said in a deep voice, we want to rely on ourselves. Yi Xian smiled and said, I know you want to rely on yourself, but this is my kind intention. You know me, I have no evil intentions, I just hope you can become stronger. Mo Yinchi smiled and said, I know you have no evil intentions. At this moment, Bai Zhe, who was not far away, suddenly picked up a divine state level treasure. He looked at the treasure in his hand, and his eyes lit up, good stuff. Jianghu also picked up a treasure. She picked up a ribbon. This ribbon was completely blue and looked very beautiful. It was a defensive treasure. Seeing that both of them had taken it, Mo Yinchi's mouth twitched. He hesitated for a moment, and then said, since you insist, I will not refuse. After saying that, he hurriedly picked up a treasure on the table. Yi Xian smiled and then took out 3 white jade bottles. These are elixirs I got from the Black-Yellow Great World. They can improve your physique and aptitude, and can help you improve your cultivation. After saying that, he looked at the 3 of them. Also, get ready, we are going to the Black-Yellow Great World. Mo Yinchi was stunned, and then said, to the Black-Yellow Great World? Yi Xian nodded. Mo Yinchi hesitated for a moment, and then said, the 3 of us are a bit weak. Yi Xian said, the stage there is bigger. Mo Yinchi fell silent for a moment, and then he nodded, all right. Yi Xian smiled, do your best, I firmly believe that the day will come when we fight side by side, definitely. Mo Yinchi smiled bitterly, you are moving too fast. When they were at the state of Jianghu, they were similar to Yi Xian. But now, Yi Xian was moving further and further away, and the gap between them and Yi Xian was growing wider and wider. Yi Xian looked at the 3 of them and said softly, it isn't that I want to move fast, but this world is forcing me to move fast. This world is very cruel, and you have to work hard as well. Only in this way can you control your own destiny. Mo Yinchi nodded, I know, we have been working hard all this time. Meanwhile, Jianghu suddenly said, I have already asked that Sanglan Academy to come here. Sanglan Academy. Yi Xian looked at Jianghu, and said with a smile, this is a good thing, after they come, if there is anything you need, just let me know. Jianghu looked at Yi Xian, are you still the dean? Yi Xian smiled, of course. I have always been the dean of Sanglan Academy. Jianghu nodded slightly, all right. After chatting with Jianghu and the others for a while, Yi Xian left the room, and Jianghu followed him out. Yi Xian looked at Jianghu, let's walk together. Jianghu nodded. Yi Xian took Jianghu and strolled along a Shao Dao of the sword sect. Along the way, there were swordsmen passing by from time to time, and these swordsmen would stop and salute when they saw Yi Xian. Sword sect. Nowadays, the sword sect status in the entire chaotic universe had returned to its former transcendent status. Because everyone knew that the current god of God, Yi Xian, was the sect leader of the sword sect. Along the way, Yi Xian softly said, how have you been recently? Jianghu nodded, very good. Saying so, she looked at Yi Xian, have you thought about going back? Go back? Yi Xian was slightly startled, and then he shook his head with a bitter smile. Go back. He naturally knew where Jianghu was referring to. Firmament world. They all came from the firmament world. As for returning to the firmament world, he had never thought about it. It wasn't that he didn't want to go back, but he was too busy right now, and there were too many things he had to face. At this time, Jianghu suddenly said, do you have time to go back together? Yi Xian nodded slightly, sure. With his current strength, if he wanted to return to the firmament world, it would be very fast. An hour later, Yi Xian and Jianghu parted ways. He went to the Great Hall of the Sword Sect. In front of the great hall stood a statue. The statue of an azure-robed man. On the shoulder of the azure-robed man sat a small white fellow. Of course, this was also a statue. As he looked at this statue, Yi Xian fell silent. Patriarch Sword Lord. In front of the statue, Yi Xian fell silent for a very long time. Finally, he turned and left. The next day, countless powerhouses of the chaotic universe boarded starships and set out for the Xuanhuan Great World. In the starry sky, Yi Xian stood on the head of the golden dragon. Beside him were Shangguan Xian, and Jianghu. Enter the Xuanhuan Great World. He hadn't made this decision on a whim. If he continued to stay in the chaotic universe, he would be a sitting duck. This was because he knew that the people of the Xuanhuan Great World would never let this matter rest. Thus, he chose to go to the Xuanhuan Great World of his own accord. A risk. But it was also an opportunity. Because the northern region had just been destroyed, the people of the Xuanhuan Great World would definitely be afraid. As long as they were afraid, it would be his opportunity. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Xian, beside him. How soon can we reach the northern region? Shangguan Xian said in a low voice, the northern region has countless teleportation arrays in the starry sky. We can reach the northern region in 10 days at most. 10 days. Yi Xian nodded slightly, passed down the order. After entering the northern region, no one is allowed to kill the innocent, rape, or pillage. Anyone who dares to violate this rule will be killed without mercy. Shangguan Xian nodded, I have already given the order. Yi Xian looked at Shangguan Xian, She was a little nervous. Yi Xian smiled, don't be nervous. I mean no harm. I'm just curious. Did you guess what I was thinking or? Shangguan Xian, said softly, no, it's just that our god nation has never slaughtered the weak. When we came out of the eastern wasteland world, we did not slaughter the weak. As she said this, she looked at Yi Xian, moreover, I think that the Divine Lord's goal should be to develop the northern region, not to destroy it. Yi Xian smiled, you guessed right. Development. What he needed to do now was to develop and make the people around him stronger together. Shangguan Xian said again, I am a little worried that the northern region has already been occupied. If it is occupied, what should we do? Yi Xian sneered, if it is occupied, then declare war. Declare war. Shangguan Xian looked at Yi Xian, declare war no matter who it is? Yi Xian nodded, no matter who it is, we declare war. Shangguan Xian was puzzled, why? When Yi Xian was about to speak, Jianghu, who was next to him, suddenly said, because we can't back down now. Right now, everyone thinks there's a super strong person behind us. The more we back down, the less fear they'll have. And the more arrogant we are, the more they will hold back. So, we have no way out now. No matter who is in front of us, we have to be firm to the end. The more firm we are, the more afraid they will be. Shangguan Xian glanced at Jianghu and did not speak. Yi Xian nodded. Arrogant. As he spoke, he looked towards the starry sky in the distance and said softly, I can't keep a low profile anymore. I want to be high profile. I want to be arrogant. I want to tell the people of the black-yellow great world that I have someone backing me. There's an expert. The two women. P.S. There will be an event at the Yichuang International Convention and Exhibition Center tomorrow. Those who are here can come and have some fun. Lastly, the ladies from Beijing were pretty. Brothers, can I go wild? Chapter 691. 5 days later. In the vast starry sky, Yi Xian stood on the head of the golden dragon. Behind him were the experts of the chaotic universe. Yi Xian looked at the end of the starry sky with a calm expression. This time, he would bring the people behind him to a whole new world. The black-yellow great world. This was the most prosperous world in the four-dimensional universe. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Miss Ayu, have you come into contact with the black-yellow great world before? Ah, you said, no. Yi Xian was about to speak when you said, however, I've heard of them in the fifth dimension. This Xuanhuan great world has produced many outstanding people, and these people forcibly charged through the fifth dimension. Although they did not succeed, they were still terrifying. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I heard you say that one has to pass 3 tests to go to the fifth dimension. Is that right? Ah, you said, yes. The 4-dimensional universe and the 5-dimensional universe aren't connected. There are too many things between the 2 dimensions. Yi Xian asked, what things? Ah, you fell silent for a moment, and then said, the dimensions of the 5-dimensional universe are completely different from the 4-dimensional universe. Whether it's in terms of space or time, it's not something that the people of the 4-dimensional universe can understand. There are actually 3 ways to enter the 5th dimension. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, which 3 ways? Ah, you said, the first way is to forcefully break through the dimensional barrier between the 4-dimensional universe and the 5-dimensional universe. However, this isn't something that ordinary people can do. So far, among the experts of the 4-dimensional universe that I've met, only the 3 people at the top of the pagoda and the owner of this sword can do it. The 3 swords at the top of the pagoda. Yi Xian fell silent. He had come into contact with the owners of the 3 swords, but he didn't know their true strength. Just how strong were these 3 people? This had always been a mystery. At this moment, Ah, you said, the second way is to cheat. Cheat? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he asked, how do I cheat? Ah, you said, you can cheat. You can enter the 5th dimension with this broken pagoda. Prison pagoda. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, Miss Yu, can I go to the 5th dimension now? You said, sure. Yi Xian asked, how do we get there? What are you going to do? Are you trying to kill me? Yi Xian was speechless. Ah, you continued, you can go in now, but the problem is, what about after you go in? Have you thought about it? Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. I didn't think about that. Ah, you said, you can't even survive in the 4th dimension, and you want to go to the 5th dimension? The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched slightly. This Miss Ah Yu was good at everything, but she was ruthless with her words. You continued, there is another way to enter the 5th dimension. Yi Xian was a little curious. What method? You said, knowledge. Yi Xian frowned. Knowledge? What do you mean? Ah, you said, the 5th dimension's dimensions, Dao laws, time, space, matter, and so on are all different from the 4th dimension. If you people here can see through them and truly understand them, then you can enter the 5th dimension. However, as far as I know, there seems to be only one person in history who entered the 5th dimension using this method. Moreover, this person is a legend in our world, and it's still unknown whether there is such a person or not. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, in other words, someone has entered the 5th dimension in the past, right? You said, it's just a possibility. Yi Xian said, Miss Ah Yu, I've always been curious about why all of you appeared in the 4th dimension. You fell silent. Yi Xian asked, can't you say it? You said indifferently, there's nothing that can't be said. The reason we're here is because we escaped. Escaped? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Someone in the 5th dimension wants to harm all of you? You said coldly, it's not that someone in the 5th dimension wants to harm us, it's that this stupid pagoda is too stupid. Heavens! It's definitely the number 1 idiot in the 5th dimension. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly trembled as if it was protesting. You said angrily, be quiet, or I'll beat you to death. The prison pagoda was speechless. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. What did this prison pagoda do all those years ago? It actually made you so angry. You said coldly, this stupid pagoda isn't just an ordinary kind of stupid. It fell to its current state completely because of its own doing. If you don't do it, you won't die. But it keeps doing it, and it keeps dying. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and said, Miss Yu, what level is this Xiao Ta in the 5th dimension? Could it be that it has become a common street in the 5th dimension? The prison pagoda suddenly trembled in strong protest. Yu was silent for a moment and said, "You don't have to worry about this. This stupid pagoda is a peak existence in the 5th dimension. Besides a sword and a scripture, it has no opponents." Sword? Scripture? Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "What sword? What scripture?" Yu said, "I've never seen that scripture, but I've heard of it. Supposedly, it's a general outline of the Grand Tao laws, and it contains 3,600 Grand Taos. As for its might, I don't know. In any case, it's as famous as this stupid pagoda." Yi Xian asked again, "What about the sword? What sword is it?" Yu said, "The sword of eternal life." "The sword of eternal life?" Yi Xian asked, "What does that mean?" Yu said, "According to legend, this sword has the power of eternal life, and you won't die if you hold it. That's why it's called the sword of eternal life." Yi Xian asked again, "Compared to the sword at the top of the pagoda, who is stronger?" Yu suddenly said angrily, "Are you crazy? They haven't fought each other, so how would I know who is stronger? Can you not ask such childish questions?" Yi Xian was speechless. Yu was silent for a moment, then said, "The sword of eternal life isn't simple. It's not just a sword, but also a symbol." Eternal life? Who in the world can live forever? Eternal life. Yi Xian was silent. Cultivation. The ultimate goal of all cultivators was to live a little longer. It could also be said that it was for eternal life. But could people really live forever? At this time, Shengguan Xian's voice suddenly came from the side, "Divine Lord, look ahead." Yi Xian lifted his head and looked into the distance. There was a giant will there. A spatial stronghold. There were many powerful auras around this spatial stronghold. Clearly, these people were the powerhouses of the northern region. Yi Xian's face was expressionless as he flew out. At this time, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man stared at Yi Xian. "You're Yi Xian." Yi Xian smiled. "It seems that you already know what happened in the chaotic universe. That saves me a lot of trouble. Surrender or die?" The old man looked at Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, don't be arrogant, old man." Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Chi. A strand of light flashed. At the same time, a bloody head fell slowly to the ground. Yi Xian looked into the distance and said calmly, "Surrender or die." In the dark, the powerhouses didn't respond because they had already fled. Shengguan Xian asked, "Should we chase?" Yi Xian shook his head. "No need. Let's go in." An hour later, everyone entered the wheel. The wheel activated, and soon, everyone entered the spatial passage. In the spatial passage, Shengguan Xian looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyes were closed, and no one knew what he was thinking. Shengguan Xian retreated to Jianghu's side and said softly, "Miss Jiang, after arriving in the northern region, I have an idea." Jianghu looked at Shengguan Xian. What idea?" Shengguan Xian said solemnly, "After we arrive in the northern region, we will definitely encounter many challenges, and the big challenges can only be faced by God Masters. As for the powerhouses of our Scandinavia, their strength is still not enough. Therefore, I want to transfer some of Scandinavia's internal resources to these powerhouses." Jianghu nodded. "It's completely possible." Speaking of this, he looked at Shengguan Xian. Are you a little nervous?" Shengguan Xian nodded. "Scandinavia's treasury was originally abundant, but after we conquered the vast universe, we spent a lot. Although we still have some now, if we transfer it out, I'm afraid there will be a shortage of funds. Once there is a shortage of funds, it will affect the entire operation of Scandinavia." Jianghu smiled. "You want to ask him for money?" Shengguan Xian glanced at Yi Xian and nodded. Right now, the richest person in Scandinavia was undoubtedly Yi Xian. Super rich. Yi Xian also had the most treasures. However, she did not dare to ask Yi Xian, because those were Yi Xian's private finances. Jianghu thought about it, then said, "You can tell him directly." Shangguan Xian smiled. Miss Jiang said it would be better. Jianghu looked at Shangguan Xian. Actually, he is very good and easy to talk to. However, his character is sometimes a little extreme. He asked me to come, not to replace you, but to hope that you can understand that when he decides on something, you can give suggestions, but it is best not to openly question his decision in front of outsiders. I believe that even the former Little Seven Divine Master did not like this kind of counselor. What do you think? Shangguan Xian nodded. I know. Jianghu smiled. I'll go talk to him. After speaking, she brought Shangguan Xian to Yi Xian's side. Jianghu was about to speak, but Yi Xian suddenly took out 5 white jade bottles and handed them to the 2 women. These are divine pills, pills that can help people advance from the Emperor realm to the God realm. There are only 10 of them. Choose 10 Emperor realm experts and help them advance to the God realm. Jianghu said solemnly. Who do you choose? Yi Xian smiled. What do you think? Jianghu nodded. Understood. Yi Xian took out another storage ring and handed it to the 2 women. There are 1 billion divine crystals in the storage ring. Give each of the 10 people 100 million, so that they do not have to worry about cultivation resources. As for the others, tell them not to worry. I will think of a way to get more divine pills. Strive to help our Emperor realm experts reach the God realm. Jianghu nodded. Okay. The 2 women turned and left. Yi Xian looked up at the end of the distance. Black yellow great world. I am coming. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared at the end of the spatial passage. The middle-aged man smiled. Black Yellow Lord asked me to welcome Divine Master Yi. Chapter 692. Black Yellow Lord? Yi Xian frowned. Black Yellow Great World's Lord? The middle-aged man nodded. Yes. Yi Xian smiled. You welcome me? The middle-aged man smiled slightly. Welcome to the Black Yellow Great World, Divine Lord Yi. Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man. Thank you. The middle-aged man bowed slightly. Divine Lord Yi, you're welcome. I have conveyed my message, so I won't disturb you any longer. Goodbye. With that, he turned and disappeared at the end. Beside Yi Xian, Shangguan Xian said solemnly, what are they up to? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. But they won't be so kind. Jianghu nodded. Our top priority is to get to the northern region and figure out the entire Black Yellow Great World. Yi Xian nodded. Pass down the order. Full speed ahead. Shangguan Xian nodded and turned to leave. Beside Yi Xian, Jianghu said solemnly, what are your plans after we get there? Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Those who are willing to make friends with us, we won't provoke them. But if anyone provokes us, we'll kill them. Jianghu glanced at Yi Xian and shook his head with a smile. You're still so violent. Yi Xian looked into the distance and whispered, I have to be violent. This time, I, Yi Xian, will tell everyone in the Black Yellow Great World that I'm not easy to bully. Having said that, he seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly took out a Dao Realm sword and began to devour it. Cultivate. Strive to reach the Saint Realm. His biggest weakness now was that his realm was not high enough. The difference in realm was too great. The realm affected his divine soul and spiritual energy. The higher the realm, the stronger the divine soul and spiritual energy. And the stronger the divine soul and spiritual energy, the more powerful the sword skill he displayed. Especially the infinite sword. This sword skill also required a lot of divine soul and spiritual energy. Seeing that Yi Xian had begun to cultivate, Jianghu did not disturb him and quietly retreated. Just like that, Yi Xian absorbed sword after sword. 7 days later. Yi Xian, who was sitting on the golden dragon's head, suddenly opened his eyes. Chi. In his eyes, two rays of sword light flashed like lightning. At the same time, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from his body. Saint Realm. Yi Xian stood up, and a breath of foul air floated out of his mouth. At this moment, he felt that his divine sense and mental strength had become much stronger. It could be said that there was a qualitative change. At this moment, he suddenly looked up and saw a white light not far away. Have we arrived? Everyone in the surroundings was looking at the ray of white light. Soon, everyone disappeared in the white light. After a long time, Yi Xian opened his eyes. At this moment, they were above the clouds, and below the clouds was a boundless mountain range. Beside Yi Xian, Shengguanxian said solemnly, "This is the territory of the northern region." Yi Xian scanned the surroundings, and his expression quickly turned solemn. Spiritual energy. The spiritual energy here was so abundant that the chaotic universe could not compare to it at all. At this moment, he knew why this place was known as the most prosperous world in the four-dimensional universe. With such abundant spiritual energy, the people here could be said to be blessed by nature. Not only Yi Xian, but everyone present was also shocked by the spiritual energy here. This was simply a paradise for cultivators. Yi Xian turned to look at a soldier of the northern region not far away. "Where is the main city of the northern region?" The soldier pointed to the right. "It's over there." As he spoke, he wanted to say something but hesitated. Yi Xian said, "What do you want to say?" The soldier looked at Yi Xian. "Divine Master, are you really not going to slaughter and plunder?" Yi Xian said calmly, "I will not let my people slaughter and plunder here. However, from now on, I, Yi Xian, have the final say in the northern region. If anyone resists or disobeys, I will definitely kill them." With that, he lightly stomped his right foot, and the golden dragon turned into a beam of golden light and disappeared into the horizon. The soldiers of the northern region stood where they were, looking at each other in silence. No one dared to have any rebellious thoughts. This was because they knew how terrifying Yi Xian's strength was. More importantly, Yi Xian was backed by a woman in a plain dress who was as powerful as a god. These soldiers of the northern region who had seen the woman in a plain dress with their own eyes did not dare to have any rebellious thoughts. Moreover, Yi Xian was not a merciful person. About an hour later, Yi Xian and the others arrived at the royal city of the northern region. At this moment, the royal city of the northern region was already in ruins. Yi Xian naturally knew why this had happened. It must have been the doing of the woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian looked around, then looked at a soldier of the northern region beside him. "Where is the nearest city from here?" The soldier pointed to the front. 1,000 miles ahead, there is a city called Tianjiang City. Although it is not as big as the royal city, it is not small either. Yi Xian nodded. "Go to Tianjiang City." With that, he looked at the Celestial Arcanum sect leader not far away. "Send your people out to gather information. I want to understand the entire Xianhuang Great World." The Celestial Arcanum sect leader bowed slightly. This subordinate understands. With that, he turned and left. Yi Xian looked at Shengguanxian again. "Pass down the order again. Our people are not to kill the innocent, slaughter and plunder. As for the territory of the northern region, no one is to touch it." Shengguanxian nodded. "I will supervise." Yi Xian nodded. Now that he was in charge of the entire northern region, he was most afraid that his people would act recklessly. Many people were greedy, and the northern region was obviously much wealthier than the chaotic universe. Under such circumstances, he was afraid that his people would act recklessly out of greed. An hour later, Yi Xian led the group to Tianjiang City. Tianjiang City was located next to a huge river. This river was like a giant dragon that coiled around Tianjiang City. Behind the river was a stretch of towering mountains. The gates of Tianjiang City were tightly shut. Inside the city, Yi Xian felt some auras. However, none of these auras exceeded the Emperor realm. Obviously, All the emperor realm and above experts of the northern region had been killed by the plain-dressed woman. With a leap, Yi Xian arrived at the gates of Tianjiang city. On top of the gates stood some northern region soldiers. Yi Xian walked up to the city gate. He raised his hand and brandished the sword. Chi! The city gate crumbled in an instant. Not far in front of Yi Xian stood an 11 or 12-year-old girl. This girl looked 60 to 70% similar to the king of the northern region. Behind the little girl, there were hundreds of soldiers. At this time, a northern region soldier walked to Yi Xian's side. Lord God, she is the king of the northern region's only daughter. The king of the northern region's daughter. Yi Xian looked at the girl. You want to kill me? The girl glared at Yi Xian. You killed my father. Yi Xian smiled. If I don't kill him, he will kill me. The girl looked at Yi Xian. I know I can't beat you. Yi Xian smiled. Then why are you still here? The girl looked at Yi Xian. I won't leave. Yi Xian walked up to the little girl and pressed his sword against the little girl's forehead. However, the little girl showed no fear. She just looked at Yi Xian. All around, the northern region soldiers' faces changed. Some wanted to attack, but didn't dare. The king of the northern region was very popular in the northern region. Yi Xian suddenly sheathed his sword. He smiled. I won't kill you. What happened between your father and me is between men. Of course, I know that if he wins, he will probably kill everyone around me. But I won't kill you. Do you know why? The girl looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Yi Xian smiled. In my opinion, the things between men shouldn't involve their wives and children. With that, he was already behind the girl, walking towards the distant Tianjiang city. Seeing this, Shengguan and Jianghu breathed a sigh of relief. If Yi Xian killed this girl, all the northern region soldiers present would undoubtedly resent him, and they might even rebel. Because before Yi Xian came, he said that he wouldn't kill them. If Yi Xian killed this girl, he would lose the support of the northern region. Moreover, these soldiers would feel threatened. If Yi Xian didn't even spare this girl, then what about their families? Now that Yi Xian didn't kill the girl, many of the northern region soldiers heaved sighs of relief. Not far away, the girl stood there in silence. At this time, an old man appeared beside the little girl and said softly, Your Highness Zhen, let's go. The girl was expressionless. How strong is he? The old man hesitated for a moment. No one in the northern region can fight him. There wasn't a single great emperor in the northern region right now. How could they fight against Yi Xian? The girl turned to look in the direction Yi Xian had left in, then walked away. Along the way, the soldiers from the northern territory saluted the little girl, but the little girl ignored them. Not far away, Shengguan glanced at the girl and asked softly, Should I make her disappear? Jianghu shook his head. No need. Shengguan said softly, This person has rallying power. I'm afraid she'll become a disaster in the future. Jianghu smiled. It's better for us if she's alive, because this will let the northern region know that we aren't cruel people. What we need now is to win over the hearts of the people, and keeping her alive is the best way to win them over. As for whether she'll become a disaster in the future. At this point, she looked in the direction Yi Xian had left in and said softly, As long as nothing happens to him, she'll never be able to cause any trouble. Shengguan nodded. Understood. Jianghu said, Let's go. We'll be busy soon. With that, the two women led the chaotic universe's powerhouses towards Tianjiang city. After entering Tianjiang city, Yi Xian constantly looked around. He had to admit that the architecture of the Xuanhuan Great World really couldn't be compared to the chaotic universes. This place was far more developed than the chaotic universes. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped in his tracks. He turned around and saw an old man in a white robe standing not far to his right. He didn't know when this white-robed old man had appeared. Yi Xian was expressionless. He held his sword in his right hand and didn't speak. The white-robed old man looked at Yi Xian. We want to see your master. Yi Xian, P.S., poor. Chapter 693. Meet the plain-dressed woman. At this moment, Yi Xian finally understood why they had not encountered any accidents along the way. It wasn't that these people didn't want to make a move, but they were afraid. Afraid of the plain-dressed woman. And now, they were asking to meet the plain-dressed woman. Obviously, they wanted to find out more about her. Yi Xian looked at the old man and smiled. My master is in a place far away. If you want to see her, you can go find her. The white-robed old man fell silent. At this time, Yi Xian said, she killed the northern region king with a single sword strike. Hearing this, the white-robed old man's pupils shrank. At this time, Yi Xian said, moreover, her real body didn't appear. The white-robed old man looked at Yi Xian. Are you threatening the old man? Yi Xian smiled. No, I'm just reminding you. With that, he opened his palm and the prison pagoda appeared in his hand. The white-robed old man's gaze fell on the prison pagoda. Yi Xian smiled. This pagoda is a fifth-dimensional treasure. Do you want it? The white-robed old man looked at Yi Xian. Do you think your master is invincible? Yi Xian grinned. Then go find her. However, a friendly reminder. My master has a bad temper. With that, he walked into the distance. The white-robed old man suddenly said, Yi Xian, this is the black-yellow great world. This old man will give you a piece of advice. It's best to keep a low profile. Yi Xian stopped. You're welcome to target me. With that, he quickly disappeared into the distance. In the field, the white-robed old man's expression was ugly. His right hand was clenched tightly. But in the end, he didn't dare to make a move. The plain-dressed woman. Now, the entire Xianhuang Great World was investigating this woman. However, there was almost no information about this woman in the entire black-yellow Great World. To understand the plain-dressed woman, they had to go through Yi Xian. Before thoroughly understanding the plain-dressed woman, no one dared to make a move against Yi Xian. At least not yet. A woman in a plain dress. Although this person had not appeared in the black-yellow Great World, the entire black-yellow Great World had heard of this person's legend. He had killed the king of the northern region with a single strike. However, the king of the northern region was no ordinary person. He was a top expert of the black-yellow Great World. Just how terrifyingly powerful was the other party to be able to kill the king of the northern region with a single strike? The white-robed old man remained silent for a very long time. In the end, he turned around and left. Now, they didn't dare to touch Yi Xian. Yi Xian arrived at the city lord's mansion of Tianjiang City. He had to admit that the city lord's mansion was much more impressive than the Temple of Order City. The entire king's mansion was nearly 1,000 feet tall and had 3 floors. In front of the king's mansion, there were 2 statues of demonic beasts that were dozens of feet long. Style. Yi Xian smiled and then walked into the prince's mansion. At the moment, the prince's mansion was empty. Yi Xian arrived at the main hall. He glanced at the surroundings and said, "Come out." Just as he finished speaking, a black shadow appeared not far in front of him. Assassin. Yi Xian's face was expressionless. From the Elysium? The black shadow replied, "Yes." Yi Xian gazed at the black shadow before him. "Disappear from my sight." The black shadow replied, "Don't be angry, Divine Lord Yi. I'm here this time to resolve the enmity between us." "Resolve the enmity between us?" Yi Xian smiled. "How do you intend to resolve it?" The black shadow replied, "We won't target you anymore, Divine Lord Yi." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "What do I have to pay to make you kill someone?" The black shadow replied in a low voice, "I'm sorry, but we won't accept your request." Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment onward, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince shall be removed, and Yi Lang shall succeed him. It was an old man in a black robe who spoke. A young man stood not too far behind the old man, and he had a faint smile on the corners of his mouth. It was none other than Yi Lang. The elders of the Yi estate stood on both sides. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi estate rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of crown prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard quickly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. Subordinate will go through fire and water for the crown prince. I am willing to risk my life for you. Yi Lang nodded. Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood. Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu suddenly stopped as if he had seen something. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder squinted his eyes, and his face was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man." "How dare you?" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. "Pooh!" Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Peng! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. "Why?" Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he's crippled or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Jianghu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 guards. From now on, you'll be my guard." Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. "I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand?" Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yilang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yilang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yiling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yilang, and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yilang did not stop there, and he charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yilang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yilang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped down on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yiling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yiling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu, and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 694. Sorry for the interruption. The spear-wielding man didn't hesitate to leave. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of the spear-wielding man. He glanced at the spear-wielding man. How should I address you? The spear-wielding man replied, Dark North. Yi Xian asked, Why have you come to challenge me? The spear-wielding man looked at Yi Xian. I'm from the northern region. The northern region. Yi Xian smiled. You're here to avenge the king of the northern region? Dark North shook his head. I just want to fight you. Yi Xian looked at Dark North. Take this. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. In front of Yi Xian, Dark North's eyes narrowed. He squatted down, and the space beneath his feet caved in. In the next moment, he held the spear in his right hand and thrust it forward. Rumble. Space was instantly torn apart wherever the spear passed. At this moment, Yi Xian's fist arrived. Fist of Burial. The fist smashed down, and Dark North was instantly blasted over 1 kilometer back in front of Yi Xian. After he stopped, Dark North looked at his right hand. At this moment, his entire right arm had been shattered. After a moment of silence, Dark North looked up at Yi Xian. I can't beat you. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. But it didn't take long for him to stop. Thank you for not starting a massacre in the northern region. Yi Xian smiled. But if you had won, your people would have started a massacre in the chaotic universe, right? Dark North fell silent for a moment, and then he said, Not everyone in the northern region is greedy. Of course, it doesn't matter anymore. You're the lord of the northern region now, so please treat the northern region well. As soon as he finished speaking, he swiftly vanished into the distance. On the spot, Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before vanishing as well. 2 hours later, Yi Xian arrived at the Bound of Universe. The Bound of Universe wasn't very far from the northern region. As soon as Yi Xian stepped foot into the Bound of Universe, an old man suddenly appeared before him. The elder looked at Yi Xian. What business do you have here? Yi Xian cupped his fists. Please inform them that Yi Xian is here to see the mysterious Yellow Lord. Meet the Lord of Black Yellow. The elder looked at Yi Xian. Why do you want to see the mysterious Yellow Lord? Yi Xian smiled and said, You can go ahead and report it. The old man fell silent for a moment before he turned around and left. About a quarter of an hour later, the old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. He looked at Yi Xian and said, The Lord of Heaven and Earth requests your presence. Yi Xian nodded. Please lead the way. Soon, under the guidance of the old man, Yi Xian arrived at the main city of the Xianhuang world, the Xianhuang city. The Xianhuang city was the #1 city in the Xianhuang world. The entire city spanned nearly 1,000 miles and floated in the air. Looking at the Xianhuang city in front of him, Yi Xian was shocked. This city was the biggest city he had ever seen. At that moment, the elder suddenly said, Young Master Yi, please. Yi Xian nodded. Soon, he and the elder walked into the city. The city was very prosperous and there were many pedestrians. It was very lively. Soon, the elder brought Yi Xian to the Xianhuang palace. The elder gestured for him to enter. Yi Xian walked into the main hall. The main hall was extremely luxurious. The floor was made of an unknown stone material. It was soft and very comfortable to step on. At the end of the hall in front of him sat a woman. She was about 26 or 27 years old and had a peerless appearance. She wore a purple robe and there was a red dot between her eyebrows. She just sat there. Weak. This was the first impression that the woman gave Yi Xian. This was because the woman's face looked abnormally pale. It was the kind of pale that was not normal. Yi Xian was a little surprised because he did not expect the mysterious Yellow Lord to be a woman. Moreover, the mysterious Yellow Lord's aura was extremely weak. It was so weak that it was like an ordinary person. Yi Xian did not think too much about it because he had already walked in front of the woman. Behind Yi Xian, the elder just looked at him. Yi Xian stopped and bowed slightly to the woman. Subordinate Yi Xian greets the mysterious Yellow Lord. Subordinate. Hearing this, the woman's eyes flashed with surprise. She looked at Yi Xian and said, Young Master Yi, you may rise. Her voice was very thin and weak. The woman sized up Yi Xian and said softly, Young Master Yi, why are you here this time? Yi Xian bowed slightly. I am a straightforward person, so I will not beat around the bush with the mysterious Yellow Lord. This time, I came to get the mysterious Yellow Lord's approval. The woman chuckled. Young Master Yi does not need my approval at all. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I do. The woman looked at Yi Xian. You want it to be legitimate. Yi Xian nodded. The woman smiled without saying anything. Yi Xian said in a low voice, I am willing to honor you as the mysterious Yellow Lord. The woman looked straight at Yi Xian. After a long time, she suddenly looked at the elder not far away. Announce to the mysterious Yellow Great World that from now on, Yi Xian will be the King of the North. In addition, City Lord Yi will be conferred the title of King of the Kings. He will be the leader of all the kings. Hearing this, the expression of the elder not far away changed slightly. King of the Kings. In the mysterious Yellow Great World, there were a total of 6 kings. No, excluding the King of the North who had fallen, there were only 4. And these 4 were like the former King of the North, belonging to the top-level powerhouses of the mysterious Yellow Great World. Now, Yi Xian was the King of the Kings, and his title was higher than the other 4. The elder did not think too much about it and turned to leave. Yi Xian was silent. He did not expect this woman to suddenly play such a trick. But this was normal. If you wanted something, you had to pay the price. Soon, the elder returned to the main hall. At this moment, he was holding a golden seal in his hand. On the golden seal, there was a lifelike little golden dragon. The elder handed the golden seal to Yi Xian, and Yi Xian accepted it. At this moment, the woman suddenly said, King Yi, from now on, the northern region is in your hands. Yi Xian glanced at the woman. This subordinate will manage the northern region well. Saying this, he hesitated and then said, if the mysterious yellow great world needs anything, please let this subordinate know at any time. This subordinate will go through water and tread on fire. The woman nodded, thank you, King Yi. Yi Xian bowed slightly, if there is nothing else, I will take my leave. At this moment, the woman suddenly said, King Yi has just arrived in the northern region and is unfamiliar with the people and the place. I am afraid that many things will not be easy to deal with. Saying this, she looked at the elder not far away. Send an order to the National Treasury to transfer 10 billion divine crystals to the northern region. 10 billion divine crystals. The elder nodded slightly, then turned and left. Yi Xian glanced at the woman, farewell. After saying this, he turned and left. Yi Xian watched Yi Xian leave and did not speak for a long time. At this moment, the elder who had left before appeared in front of the woman. The elder bowed slightly, Your Majesty. What is he trying to do? The woman said softly, Our King Yi wants to use the emperor to order the feudal vassals. Saying this, she shook her head and smiled, his ambition is not ordinary. The elder frowned slightly, then why does Your Majesty want to do this? The woman said softly, he and I are using each other. After saying this, she slowly closed her eyes, I want all his information. After leaving the mysterious yellow palace, Yi Xian looked up at the sky. All along, he had been the passive party, and now, he did not want to be passive anymore. Since there would definitely be trouble, he chose to take the initiative to face it. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the World Prison Pagoda appeared in his hand. Looking at the World Prison Pagoda in his hand, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, I wonder how many people want you. After saying this, he turned into a sword light and disappeared at the end of the horizon. At the end of the vast horizon, Yi Xian flew swiftly on his sword, raising his speed to the limit. About an hour later, Yi Xian, who was in the clouds, suddenly stopped. He looked up and saw an old man standing in the depths of the clouds. The old man was looking down at him at this moment. Yi Xian smiled, turned into a sword light and disappeared not far away. After Yi Xian disappeared, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far away from the elder. The middle-aged man looked at the elder and smiled, I did not expect your Xian Yuan family to also have designs on that treasure. The elder was expressionless, hasn't your Wu clan also coveted it for a long time? The middle-aged man smiled, likewise. As he said this, he looked in the direction Yi Xian had disappeared and said softly, what level do you think that woman has reached? The elder was silent for a long time, then said, to be able to instantly kill the king of the northern region, she must be at least a half step into the unknown realm. The middle-aged man asked, is it possible that she is in the unknown realm? The elder shook his head, absolutely impossible. If she really was in the unknown realm, there is no way we would not know. Moreover, people who have reached this realm have generally gone to that place to pry into the fifth dimension. There is no way they would stay in that place. At this point, his expression became somewhat gloomy. There is no way that she has reached the unknown realm. P.S. When I go home today, I have to work hard to write. Because I was singled out and criticized. I was even reported, saying that I didn't update enough and went to the healthcare center every day. That really got me into trouble. My illustrious reputation has been completely ruined. Chapter 695. The Unknown Realm. The Black Origin Great World was the most prosperous world in the four-dimensional universe. Since ancient times, the number of unknown realm experts in this place could be counted on one's fingers. Not only that, but the Black-Yellow Great World had not seen an unknown realm expert for nearly 10,000 years. At this moment, the middle-aged man suddenly said, whether this person is an unknown realm expert or not, it seems that he is not an ordinary person. The old man nodded. My Xianyuan clan has used all our power to find out this woman's true identity. She has appeared very rarely, but every time she does, it is because of Yi Xian. Yi Xian. The middle-aged man frowned slightly. I'm afraid this person is not an ordinary person. If that treasure was not so tempting, my Wu clan would not want to become enemies with him. The old man sneered. Unless that woman has really reached the legendary unknown realm, my Xian Yuan clan will not give up. The middle-aged man looked at the old man and said with a smile, it seems that your Xian Yuan clan is determined to get that treasure. The old man said calmly, isn't the Wu clan the same? The middle-aged man shook his head. If that woman has really reached the unknown realm, my Wu clan will naturally give up. Only unknown realm experts are qualified to possess this kind of treasure. If she has not reached the unknown realm, my Wu clan will naturally fight for it. The old man looked at the middle-aged man. Temporarily join forces? The middle-aged man smiled slightly. That is exactly what I intend to do. Yi Xian returned to Tianjiang City. Upon returning, Yi Xian immediately began to break through to the Saint Realm. The news that Yi Xian had been conferred a title by the Black-Yellow Great World quickly spread throughout the Black-Yellow Great World. A King of Kings. As soon as this title was announced, countless people immediately took pleasure in his misfortune. This was because in the Black-Yellow Great World, including the former king of the northern region, there were a total of 7 people who had been conferred the title of king. And these 7 people were the top experts of the Black-Yellow Great World. But now, not only had Yi Xian been conferred the title of King of the Northern Region, but he had also been conferred the title of King of Kings. Was this not a slap in the face to the other 6? But what was surprising was that the other 6 kings did not have any reaction. It should be said that all the major forces in the Black-Yellow Great World had remained silent about Yi Xian's entry into the Northern Region. None of the forces went to cause trouble for Yi Xian. Within the royal palace, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and began to devour Dao realm swords in a frenzy. As the swords were devoured, the aura emanating from Yi Xian's body grew stronger and stronger. Not long after, he devoured another Dao realm level sword. Just like that, the speed at which Yi Xian devoured the swords grew faster and faster. 5 days later, an extremely powerful aura suddenly erupted from Yi Xian's body. Boom! This aura swept out in all directions, causing the surrounding space to crack. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his eyes. In his eyes, 2 rays of sword light flickered like lightning, extremely dazzling. Who? Yi Xian took a deep breath, and a surge of energy spread throughout his body. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Saint Realm. He had reached the Saint Realm, but he had devoured all his Dao realm swords. Now, he did not even have a single Dao realm sword. Moreover, the effect of a sword at the Dao state level on him was almost negligible. Divine Realm. What he needed now were Divine Realm swords, and he only had 2 Divine Realm swords. As for the Executing Heaven sword and Soul Suppressing sword, they were both beyond the Divine Realm, but he could not devour them. Fortunately, he had obtained 2 Divine Realm swords from the King of the Northern Region. Of course, he was also quite worried, because in the future, he might need at least Divine Realm swords, and these swords could not be bought with money. In the shop, Yi Xian was silent for a long time. Finally, he turned and walked out of the main hall. At the entrance of the main hall, Shangguan Xian had been waiting for a long time. Shangguan Xian bowed slightly to Yi Xian. The northern region is vast, and we have almost mastered it. However, some ancient families and sects have moved away. Yi Xian nodded. It doesn't matter. Shangguan Xian nodded slightly and said, it has been a bit quiet recently. Yi Xian smiled. Isn't it good to be quiet? Shangguan Xian shook her head. I'm afraid they will make a big move. Most importantly, we don't know who our enemies are. Enemies. Yi Xian was silent. So far, no one had attacked them, which meant that these forces might not be their enemies, but it was also possible that they were all their enemies. At this moment, a soldier suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The soldier bowed slightly to Yi Xian. Divine Lord, the King of the Southern Region's envoy requests to see His Majesty. King of the Southern Region. Yi Xian's lips curled up. Send him in. The soldier bowed respectfully and retreated. Not long after, a middle-aged man came over. The middle-aged man wore a white robe and held a folding fan in his hand. He had a graceful demeanor. The middle-aged man walked in front of Yi Xian and cupped his fists. This one is Li Munin, a small advisor of the King of the Southern Region. Greetings, King Yi. Yi Xian smiled and said, no need to be so polite. Li Munin flicked his finger, and a storage ring fell in front of Yi Xian. On behalf of the Southern Territory and my king, I congratulate King Yi on taking over the Northern Territory. This is a small token of my king's appreciation. Please accept it. Yi Xian glanced at the storage ring. There were 5 billion divine crystals in it. Yi Xian put away the storage ring and smiled. Please tell the King of the Southern Region that I, Yi Xian, thank him. Li Munin smiled. King Yi, this King of the Northern Region has a close relationship with the Eastern Region. Please pay attention to the Eastern Region. Eastern Region. Yi Xian frowned slightly. He looked at Shengguanxian. The latter said solemnly, the King of the Northern Region's wife is the daughter of the King of the Eastern Region. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. At this time, Li Munin said, King Yi, the forces in the black-yellow great world are complicated. Moreover, many forces are interested in the future. The treasures on King Ye's body are very tempting. Therefore, please be careful. Yi Xian looked at Li Munin. Thank you for the reminder. Li Munin cupped his fists. This one still has something to do. I will take my leave first. Yi Xian looked at Shengguanxian. Send Mr. Li off for me. Shengguanxian nodded. After sending Li Munin off, Shengguanxian returned to Yi Xian's side. She said solemnly, is the Southern Region expressing goodwill? Yi Xian said in a low voice, for now, yes. Saying so, he shook his head and smiled. It's all thanks to her. The woman in the plain dress. Yi Xian knew that whether it was the Lord of the Black-Yellow Great World or the King of the Southern Region, they were expressing goodwill to him because of the woman in the plain dress. If the woman in the plain dress had not killed the King of the Northern Region that day, not to mention entering the Northern Region, it would have been a big problem for him to even reach the Northern Region. Because of the existence of the woman in the plain dress, many forces in the Black-Yellow Great World no longer chose to target him. At least not on the surface. After all, these forces were not stupid. Even in the Black-Yellow Great World, there were not many forces who could fight against a person who could kill the King of the Northern Region. At this time, Shengguanxian, who was beside Yi Xian, suddenly said, what should we do now? Yi Xian was about to speak when a sword light suddenly appeared in the sky not far away. The next moment, the sword light appeared directly in front of Yi Xian. The sword light dissipated, and an old man with a long sword on his back appeared in front of Yi Xian. The old man looked at Yi Xian, waved his right hand, and a challenge token fell in front of Yi Xian. The Immortal Sword sect has long heard of young Master Ye's unparalleled swordsmanship. I would like to invite young Master Yi to the Immortal Sword sect for the sword-seeking meet. I wonder if young Master Yi dares to go. The Immortal Sword sect. Yi Xian smiled and then looked at Shengguanxian. This is the enemy. Now, make the Immortal Sword sect our enemy. Shengguanxian glanced at the old man and nodded. Understood. Yi Xian looked at the swordsman old man and said with a smile, go to the Immortal Sword sect for the sword-seeking meet? The old man said lightly, if you don't dare, you don't have to go. Yi Xian smiled and said, do you think I'll go just because you want me to? How embarrassing would that be? The swordsman old man was expressionless. Then you don't dare. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Chi! A ray of sword light flashed in the field. The swordsman old man's face changed and he immediately drew his sword and slashed. Chi! His sword slashed down, and the sword in his hand was instantly split into two. At the same time, his arm holding the sword was directly sent flying. Blood spurted out like a fountain. The old man was horrified. He looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, a ray of sword light suddenly flew through his throat. Chi! The old man's head directly flew. Yi Xian glanced at the old man's head. Pass down the order. From this moment on, the Northern Territory declares war on the Immortal Sword Sect. Shengguan Xian, end of this chapter. Chapter 696. The Northern Region had declared war on the Immortal Sword Sect. The Northern Region's sudden declaration of war shocked numerous powers in the Xianhuang Great World. No one expected Yi Xian to suddenly declare war on the Immortal Sword Sect. One had to know that the Immortal Sword Sect wasn't an ordinary power. It had huge influence and power in the Xianhuang Great World. Yi Xian had declared war without saying a word. What was he trying to do? Dominate the Xianhuang Great World? Immortal Sword Sect. The Immortal Sword Sect was located in the south of the Xianhuang Great World. They had their own independent world, the Sword World. In the Xianhuang Great World, the Immortal Sword Sect could be said to be the #1 swordsman sect. Since ancient times, all the famous swordsmen in the Xianhuang Great World came from the Immortal Sword Sect. Tens of thousands of years ago, the Immortal Sword Sect was the #1 power in the Xianhuang Great World. That was because at that time, the Immortal Sword Sect had an unknown realm expert, Sword Emperor Tingyun. Within the ceiling pavilion, there was a statue of Sword Emperor Tingyun. Although the Immortal Sword Sect wasn't as strong as before, it still had its foundations. Immortal Sword Hall. There were only 3 people in the hall. One was a middle-aged man in a green robe. His face was like jade, his long hair draped over his shoulders, and he had a faint smile on his face. On his right hand, a sword light circled around his fingers. This person was the Immortal Sword sect leader, Jian Shifeng. In the Xianhuang Great World, apart from the Xianhuang God Martial List, there was another list, the Supreme List. The people on this list were the top-end realm experts in the entire Xianhuang Great World. The king of the northern region was also on the Supreme List, and he was ranked 7th. As for Jian Shifeng, he was ranked 5th. Not far from the middle-aged man stood an old man. The old man wore a loose black robe, and his hands were hidden in his sleeves. On his back was a huge black iron sword. On the right of the old man stood a teen. The teen was around 20 years old, and he wore a white robe, hugging his sword. This young man was Eugene Zhao, who was ranked 6th on the Xianhuang Divine Martial List. Jian Shifeng suddenly laughed. I never expected that young Yi Xian would actually directly declare war on my Immortal Sword Sect. At this point, he looked at Eugene Zhao. Jin Zhao, what do you think? Eugene Zhao pondered for a moment and said, there are 2 reasons why this person declared war on our Immortal Sword Sect. Firstly, the person behind this person is extremely powerful and can attack at any time. Secondly, this person is playing a psychological game with us. Jian Shifeng smiled and said, tell me about it. There is no need to doubt the strength of the person behind him, but it is extremely likely that the other party will not be able to make a move at any time. It is precisely because of this that Yi Xian is so arrogant, because the more arrogant he is, the more afraid we will be. As long as we are afraid, he will be able to gain the advantage. Moreover, it is not only our Immortal Sword Sect. His arrogance and fearlessness will also cause other forces to be afraid. At this point, he paused for a moment and continued, just like in the secular world, the wealthier the person is, the more low-key they are. On the contrary, those who are poor or have a little bit of money will instead show off. This Yi Xian might be pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Jian Shifeng looked at Eugene Zhao. Why do you think that the person behind him will not be able to make a move? Eugene Zhao said softly, that person has appeared twice. The first time, she killed the Northern Region Marshal, and the second time, she killed the Northern Region King. Both times, she appeared as a clone and did not appear in person. Not only that, but as far as I know, the reason why she appeared is because the northern region used some methods to find her. According to my guess, that Yi Xian might not be able to contact the plain-dressed woman. Jian Shifeng asked, why do you think so? Yu Jinzhao said, it is just a guess. Jian Shifeng fell silent. At this time, Yu Jinzhao suddenly said, Sect Master, I have something to say. Jian Shifeng nodded his head. Speak. Yu Jinzhao said, there is no need for our celestial sword sect to be enemies with him. Firstly, the plain-dressed woman behind him is at least above End Realm. If such an expert goes crazy to take revenge on our celestial sword sect will suffer heavy losses. We might even lose our current position in Xianhuang Great World. Moreover, even if Sect Master obtains Yi Xian's treasure, our celestial sword sect will become the target of everyone. Jian Shifeng laughed, how would I not know what you are saying? Even if our celestial sword sect obtains that treasure, in the end, it will only benefit others. But when he said this, he didn't continue. A moment later, Jian Shifeng suddenly said, Elder Nanshan, Yu Jinzhao, the two of you can leave first. Yu Jinzhao and the old man bowed before turning around and leaving. After Yu Jinzhao and the old man left, a woman suddenly appeared in the hall. She was roughly 20 years old and wore a white dress. On her white dress was an embroidered black wolf. The black wolf was lying down and looking forward. It was extremely fierce, like it wanted to swallow someone. Beautiful. The woman's beauty couldn't be described with words. Be it her face or figure, they were perfect without a single flaw. Jian Shifeng looked at the woman. She smiled and pointed with her finger. A white jade bottle appeared in front of Jian Shifeng. Jian Shifeng swept the jade bottle and a fiery gaze flashed in his eyes. Very quickly, his expression changed and he looked at the woman. Lady Qi, why is there only half a ascension pill? The woman smiled, once this matter is settled, the other half will appear in your hands. Jian Shifeng looked at the woman. Lady Qi, who is the woman behind Yi Xian? The woman shook her head and smiled, that has nothing to do with you. Jian Shifeng kept silent for a long while before returning the jade bottle to the woman. Lady Qi, our celestial sword sect withdraws. The woman looked at Jian Shifeng and didn't say a word. Jian Shifeng smiled, I do want to break through. However, if the entire celestial sword sect is the price, then I would rather not do it. The woman smiled, there aren't more than 10 ascension pills in Xianhuang Great World. Without it, even if the sword sect leader is a genius, he wouldn't be able to break through to End Realm. Jian Shifeng kept silent. The woman said, sword sect leader should understand the difference between End Realm and Ascension Realm. Ascension Realm. Jian Shifeng shook his head, the price is too huge. My celestial sword sect can't deal with the person behind Yi Xian. The woman smiled, price? Sword sect leader, have you thought about how many celestial sword sect leaders you can create if you reach Ascension Realm? Moreover, we will deal with the person behind Yi Xian, so what are you afraid of? Jian Shifeng kept silent for a moment before he looked at the woman, the outcome of the Northern Region King. The woman shook her head, it isn't that we don't care about him, but he went to find that woman, which led to his own death. If not, even Ten Yi Xian wouldn't be able to do anything to him. As she said that, she looked at Jian Shifeng, sword sect leader, this might be your only chance to reach Ascension Realm. Of course, if you aren't willing, then we won't force you. Jian Shifeng looked at the woman. Miss Qi, why don't you find him yourself? Miss Qi smiled, our target is the person behind him. Jian Shifeng said solemnly, with your strength, you can kill Yi Xian with lightning speed. As he said that, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at Jian Shifeng, you are afraid of her. Miss Qi smiled and didn't say anything. Jian Shifeng said solemnly, Miss Qi, what level has that woman reached? Has she really reached Unknown Realm? Miss Qi shook her head, based on the current situation, she is at least above Ascension Realm. Jian Shifeng was silent for a moment, then asked, why not unknown? Miss Qi smiled, if she is in unknown realm, she could destroy the entire Xuanhuan Great World with a single sword strike, but she didn't do so. Why? Naturally, she is afraid of some existence in Xuanhuan Great World. Moreover, if an unknown realm expert appeared in the fourth dimension, there is no way we wouldn't know, and neither would those old men. Since she isn't in unknown realm, why should we be afraid of her? Jian Shifeng looked at the woman. Miss Qi, I have always been curious, what is the use of that treasure? Miss Qi smiled. You can use it to enter the fifth dimension. Enter the fifth dimension. Jian Shifeng said softly, as expected. In fact, he had already guessed that if it weren't for this temptation, these people wouldn't be willing to provoke an expert like that woman. The temptation of entering the fifth dimension was too great, especially for those who had reached a bottleneck. These people might have reached the end of the fourth dimension, and if they wanted to go further, they could only enter the fifth dimension. Simply put, the fifth dimension was their hope. Miss Qi suddenly said, have you thought it through, Sword Sect Master? Jian Shifeng looked at Miss Qi. I need a complete ascension pill. Miss Qi looked at Jian Shifeng. All right. With that, she flicked a finger, and a white jade bottle landed in front of Jian Shifeng. Jian Shifeng put away the white jade bottle, then looked to the right. Pass down my order, declare war on the Northern Territory. Miss Qi smiled, then turned and left. The Immortal Sword Sect declared war on the Northern Territory. As soon as the news spread, the entire Xuanhuan Great World was in an uproar. Yi Xian had just taken over the Northern Territory, and could be said to be a rising force, while the Immortal Sword Sect was a local force of the Xuanhuan Great World. Now that these two forces had publicly declared war on each other, it meant that the Xuanhuan Great World would no longer be peaceful. The other forces of the Xuanhuan Great World were very happy, because finally, someone had taken the lead to deal with Yi Xian. After the king of the Northern Territory was destroyed, there were naturally many forces who coveted the Northern Territory, but because Yi Xian had taken over the Northern Territory, these people had no choice but to give up on this fat piece of meat. But for an outsider like Yi Xian, these local forces of the Xuanhuan Great World did not approve of him, nor would they approve of him, but they did not dare to provoke him. After all, Yi Xian had destroyed the Northern Territory, and had even recruited the Northern Territory's army. And now, the Immortal Sword Sect had begun to make a move against Yi Xian. The strength of Yi Xian and the people behind him would soon be revealed. Northern Territory, Tianjiang City. On this day, an old man suddenly appeared outside Tianjiang City, carrying a large sword on his back. The old man looked at the city gate, and in the next moment, he suddenly pulled out the large sword on his back and slashed forward. Boom! A wave of sword chi swept into the distance like a flood, and in an instant, the city gate exploded. The sword chi did not stop there, and it swept into the city with a powerful force, heading straight for where Yi Xian was. P.S. This time, I met some authors and found that some of them can write more than 8,000 words in an hour. They can really write tens of thousands of words in an hour. I feel a little ashamed. Work hard. Chapter 697. Yi Xian, who sat cross-legged in the hall, suddenly opened his eyes, and then he vanished in the next moment. Outside the hall, Yi Xian gazed at the sword energy that had arrived in front of him with an emotionless expression on his face. When the sword energy was around 3 m away from him, he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Hiss! The sword energy was instantly slashed into pieces. Meanwhile, a large sword suddenly slashed down forcefully towards his head. When the sword slashed down, the space around Yi Xian instantly cracked into a spider web shape. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then the space around him instantly returned to normal. In the next moment, countless strands of the energy of the earth suddenly converged into his body, and then Yi Xian drew his sword and flicked it upwards. It was a head-on collision. His current physical body was at the god rank realm, and coupled with the energy of the earth, he wasn't inferior to anyone in a head-on collision. As soon as their swords collided, bang! A thunderous explosion reverberated through the air. On the other hand, the owners of both swords retreated madly. Yi Xian stopped after moving 30 m back. At practically the exact same moment, the old man stopped as well. The old man gazed at Yi Xian with a calm gaze, and he held his sword tightly in his right hand. Yi Xian didn't speak as well. Countless strands of the energy of the earth converged incessantly towards him. A moment of silence ensued. Hiss! Hiss! Both of them vanished on the spot at practically the exact same moment. 2 rays of light flashed. After Yi Xian arrived in front of the old man, he slashed down with his sword. However, the old man's figure suddenly became ethereal. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's sword suddenly stopped moving, and then he swiftly swept it behind him. Meanwhile, a sword arrived before him. Bang! As soon as the 2 swords collided, an expanse of light erupted. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly vanished once more. Yi Xian immediately took a step back. At practically the exact same moment, a sword brushed past the center of his forehead. Yi Xian twisted his right wrist, and then the sword in his hand moved at a strange angle that brushed past his stomach as it stabbed towards the old man. At this moment, the old man had already retreated 100 feet. Before the old man landed on the ground, a ray of sword light suddenly appeared about an inch away from Yi Xian's forehead. However, this ray of sword light could not advance any further because Yi Xian's sword had already pressed against this ray of sword light. In the distance, the old man suddenly gripped his great sword with both hands. With a stomp of his right foot, he leaped directly above Yi Xian's head. In the next moment, he gripped his great sword with both hands and slashed downwards. This sword could split mountains. This time, however, Yi Xian did not forcefully receive the attack. The moment the old man disappeared, he had already retreated several feet. The old man's sword missed, but the sword momentum contained in his sword still forced Yi Xian to retreat more than 100 feet. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, he gently pointed with his right hand. Buzz! A sword howl suddenly resounded, and then numerous flying swords slashed down like a storm towards the old man. The old man wielded his sword and slashed repeatedly. Bang! 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 Numerous explosions resounded incessantly while the old man retreated repeatedly, and it didn't take long for him to be over 300 m away. Suddenly, the old man stomped his right foot on the ground, and then he swept his sword horizontally. Crescent moon. As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of sword light that was like a crescent moon surged out from his blade. Bang! Yi Xian's flying swords were instantly blasted into pieces. Yi Xian stood on the spot with his sword pointed diagonally towards the ground. It wasn't the executing heaven sword, it was just an ordinary Dao realm sword. The experts of the divine kingdom had converged over since a long time ago. However, they didn't attack because Yi Xian had asked them not to. This was a battle between Yi Xian and the old man. The Yi clan's ancestral shrine. Ancestors, Yi Xian is lacking in talent and virtue. From this moment onward, Yi Xian is removed from the position of prince and will be succeeded by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral shrine. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl, Yi Ling, bowed to the people in the ancestral shrine and asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and entered the ancestral shrine. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting with his life on the line for the clan, and we do not know if he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he discards his position or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder replied coldly, then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is fighting with his life on the line for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you shouting about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. The right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Do you understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. "Elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and we don't know if he's dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to discard his position. This is unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether he discards his position or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position, and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Jianghu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand?" Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang, and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him, and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 698. Yi Ling. Jianghu had been in contact with Yi Xian for the longest time, so it could be said that she understood Yi Xian's character and temper very well. Yi Xian's reverse scale was Yi Ling. This little sister, who he had raised from a young age, was his biggest reverse scale. Whoever touched her would die. When Yi Xian was normal, his thoughts were normal, but if something happened to Yi Ling, he would become abnormal. He would become a complete lunatic. Even she was afraid of Yi Xian in that state. Because he would lose his rationality. Opposite Jianghu, Miss Qi smiled. "It's because he cares so much about his little sister that I came." Jianghu looked at Miss Qi and made a prompt decision, "Take Yi Ling away." Shangguan Xian turned and left. In front of them, a shadow guard directly rushed towards Miss Qi, but the moment he rushed out, a powerful force directly enveloped him. In the next moment, the shadow guard disappeared without a trace, as if he had never been there. Seeing this scene, Jianghu's expression changed. The other shadow guards were about to act, but Jianghu suddenly shouted angrily, "All of you, stop!" The shadow guards stopped. Miss Qi looked at Jianghu and smiled, "You're very smart. Don't let them make unnecessary sacrifices." As her voice fell, she disappeared, and when she reappeared, she was already in front of a large hall. Miss Qi pushed open the door of the hall, and a little girl was sitting not far from the door. This girl was Yi Ling. Yi Ling looked at Miss Qi, her expression calm. "You want to capture me, and then threaten my brother?" Miss Qi smiled, "You guessed half right." Yi Ling suddenly disappeared. Miss Qi's eyes flashed with surprise, and she flicked her sleeve. Boom! A powerful force suddenly shook in front of her, and this powerful force directly pushed her out of the hall. Outside the hall, Miss Qi looked at her palm, which was covered in a layer of ice. Lady Qi looked at Yi Ling and said softly, "What a powerful cold energy. I've seriously underestimated you." Yi Ling looked at Miss Qi. Suddenly, she spread her right hand, and with a gentle gesture, a door appeared behind her. An immortal sect. The Immortal Tao Sect's supreme treasure. The moment the door appeared, Miss Qi frowned. At the same time, Yi Ling suddenly performed a hand seal. Immortal Gate Spirit Seal. As soon as she finished speaking, the door behind her suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, a huge palm flew out from the door. In the distance, the corners of Miss Qi's mouth lifted slightly. Interesting. As soon as she finished speaking, she gently pressed her right hand forward. Boom! The giant hand in the Immortal Sect was forced to stop in its tracks. Then, Lady Qi lightly pressed her palm forward, and in an instant, the gigantic hand turned into nothingness. At this time, Yi Ling's body suddenly floated in the air. She clasped her hands together in midair. Myriad immortals gather. With that, the gate of immortality suddenly turned into a white light and entered her body. Boom! A monstrous pressure exploded from within Yi Ling's body, and the pressure forced Miss Qi back dozens of feet. Miss Qi looked at Yi Ling and said softly, "End realm." At this moment, Yi Ling's realm had reached the end realm. Looking at Miss Qi, Yi Ling raised her hand and struck out. Boom! As soon as the palm landed, it was like a volcanic eruption, and a powerful force swept towards Miss Qi. Miss Qi said softly, it's time to end this. As soon as she finished speaking, she clenched her right hand. In an instant, a strange talisman appeared on her fist, and in the next moment, she punched out. Rumble. The force released by Yi Ling exploded, and Yi Ling was forced back hundreds of feet. The force exploded, and Yi Ling was forced back hundreds of feet. Yi Ling glanced at the talisman on Miss Qi's fist. Miss Qi smiled and said, "This is a Dao law, a four-dimensional Dao law." Yi Ling said softly, "My brother has one too, and it's a five-dimensional one." Five-dimensional. Miss Qi smiled and said, "I've heard of it. I'd like to see it for myself." Yi Ling suddenly looked behind Miss Qi and said happily, "Brother." Miss Qi turned around, and there was nothing in front of her. In the next moment, she turned again, and by this time, Yi Ling had already disappeared into the horizon. He escaped. Miss Qi was slightly stunned. He still knows how to escape. As she said this, she shook her head and smiled. In the distant horizon, Yi Ling suddenly stopped, because there was an old man in front of her. Yi Ling was silent. At this moment, Miss Qi appeared in front of her. Miss Qi smiled and said, "I really want to know if your brother will really do anything for you." Yi Ling suddenly looked down and said, "Mizzen. Mizzen." As soon as she finished speaking, a spear suddenly shot up from below. Up in the air, Lady Qi frowned. She pointed out with her finger, directly at the tip of the spear. Bang! Miss Qi retreated several feet, and at this moment, a woman appeared in front of Yi Ling dressed in snow-white clothes. It was Enlancio. Enlancio opened her palm, and a spear appeared in her hand. She looked at Miss Qi, and without a word, she raised her hand and stabbed with her spear. Bang! A powerful force instantly drowned Miss Qi. In front of Enlancio, Miss Qi punched out. Bang! Enlancio and her spear were instantly blasted back, but in the next moment, she mysteriously appeared in front of Miss Qi. Bang! 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 Explosions resounded incessantly in the air. Not far away, Yi Ling didn't stand by idly. She was about to attack, but the old man in front of her blocked her way. Yi Ling looked at the old man and didn't waste her breath. Her figure shook, and she shot explosively towards the old man like a ray of icy light. At the same time, Zhou Yafu and Mu Nanji appeared in the air as well. Under the joint forces of the two of them and Yi Ling, the old man was directly suppressed. In the sky, countless soldiers from the north had surrounded Miss Qi and the old man. Bang! An explosion suddenly erupted in the air, and then two figures retreated explosively. They were exactly Enlancio and Miss Qi. Miss Qi glanced at Enlancio, and then she glanced at the surroundings before she said softly, "I made a mistake." A mistake. Before she came here, she thought that only Yi Xian was capable of fighting in the entire northern territory. But the facts before her eyes told her that besides Yi Xian, everyone else in the northern territory wasn't weak. Especially Enlancio and the others. All of them were extremely outstanding even in the Sky-Earth world. Miss Qi suddenly gazed at Yi Ling. Meanwhile, Enlancio was standing in front of Yi Ling. Miss Qi grinned, and then she opened her palm. A black talisman suddenly transformed into a ray of black light and vanished. Enlancio's expression changed drastically when she witnessed this scene, and she swiftly turned around. However, Yi Ling had vanished. Enlancio turned around to gaze at Miss Qi, but Miss Qi and the old man had vanished. They'd vanished. Sheng Wanxian and the others had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces. Jianghu, who stood by Sheng Wanxian, side, spoke solemnly, "Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen." Everyone fell silent. Everyone knew what Yi Ling meant to Yi Xian. Sheng Wanxian looked towards the horizon and spoke softly, "I've already notified him." Jianghu spoke solemnly. He said in a deep voice, "Pass down my order. Investigate the background of that woman." The universe. The Yellow Mistress sat silently in the hall, and there was a memorial in front of her. After a short while, she spoke softly, the Xianyuan clan has made a move. An old man by her side spoke solemnly, Xianyuan Qi? The yellow mistress nodded, the Wu clan should be behind it. She chuckled lightly, they still haven't given up on that precious treasure. The old man bowed slightly, Your Majesty, can that precious treasure really lead to the fifth dimension? The yellow mistress nodded, it should be. Because the news came from that place. That place. The old man's expression became solemn. At that moment, the yellow mistress shook her head and chuckled, but they have never thought about why such a precious treasure would fall into the hands of Yi Xian. No, they should have thought about it, but the temptation of the treasure is too great. The old man nodded, entering the fifth dimension and changing one's fate is a temptation that they can't refuse. Moreover, Yi Xian is not a simple person. This time, the two clans took away Yi Xian's sister. With Yi Xian's temper, there's really no way to resolve this peacefully. The yellow mistress spoke softly, that treasure. Who wouldn't be tempted? As she spoke, she closed the memorial in front of her. Keep an eye on it. The old man nodded and retreated quietly. In the hall, the yellow mistress looked at the memorial in front of her quietly. After a long time, she suddenly said, Let our people kill Yi Ling, don't expose yourself. She got up and walked to the door of the hall. She said softly, Once Yi Ling dies, he will probably fight them at all costs. I'm looking forward to it. He. Somewhere in the clouds, Xianyuan Qi looked at Yi Ling in front of her. She smiled and said, Don't worry, I won't kill you. Yi Ling was silent. Xianyuan Qi turned and looked into the distance. She said softly, Sword Emperor Tingyun is an unknown realm expert. If she comes out, she should be able to restrain the woman in the plain dress. Immortal Sword Sect. As soon as Yi Xian entered the Immortal Sword world, he felt many powerful sword wills. The entire Immortal Sword world was filled with sword wills. Moreover, these sword wills were extremely powerful. In the sky, flying swords flew past from time to time. What a good place. As Yi Xian was about to move forward, a middle-aged swordsman appeared in front of him. The middle-aged swordsman looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, I heard that the Immortal Sword Sect has countless experts. I am untalented, so I have come to challenge you. The middle-aged swordsman said in a deep voice, Yi Xian, my sect master wants to have a talk with you. Talk. Yi Xian smiled. He was about to speak when the space in front of him suddenly trembled. Yi Xian frowned. A moment later, his expression turned ferocious. At the same time, a blood-red sword chi rushed out of his body and into the sky. In an instant, the entire sky was dyed blood-red. Bloodline activation. Seeing this, the middle-aged man in front of Yi Xian changed his expression. Yi Xian, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Qi. The middle-aged man's head flew off. Blood spurted out like a fountain. Yi Xian raised his head and looked in the direction of the Immortal Sword Sect. His expression was twisted. Immortal Sword Sect. How dare you touch my sister? As his voice fell, a blood-red sword light suddenly flew across the Immortal Sword world. As this blood-red sword light flew past, the space began to crack inch by inch. P.S. Brothers, I want to apply for leave. Apply for 2 days of leave. Can you do it? Chapter 699. The entire Immortal Sword world was shocked. It didn't take long for the blood-red ray of light to arrive at the Immortal Sword Sect. Meanwhile, a sword suddenly slashed down from above the Immortal Sword Sect. Bang! The blood-red ray of light was forced to a stop, but the sword itself exploded apart. The blood-red ray of light in the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect dispersed, and then Yi Xian appeared before the disciples of the Sword Sect. At this moment, Yi Xian's entire body was blood-red, and he emanated a vicious aura. A vicious aura. Jian Shifeng gazed at Yi Xian, you. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Hiss! A sharp sound of tearing resounded abruptly. Jian Shifeng frowned slightly, and then he pressed his fingers together and pointed forward. A ray of light appeared on the tip of his finger. Bang! Yi Xian was forced to a stop, but Jian Shifeng himself was pushed over 10 back. Jian Shifeng gazed at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. What a good sword! You! Meanwhile, Yi Xian vanished again. A sword howl shook the sky. Jian Shifeng's eyes narrowed slightly, and then a ray of light flashed through them. A moment later, he suddenly charged forward, and an expanse of light instantly enveloped Yi Xian. Slash! Suddenly, a furious shout resounded from the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect, and then an expanse of blood-red light erupted from the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect. Rumble! The space in the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect cracked apart. At the same time, Jian Shifeng was pushed over 100 back, and the sword in his hand had cracked apart. Jian Shifeng glanced at the sword in his hand, and then he gazed at Yi Xian. He was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly pointed the executing heaven sword at him and spoke fiercely, "Immortal Sword Sect. Where's my younger sister?" Younger sister? Jian Shifeng frowned slightly. Yi Xian, what did you say? Yi Xian roared, "Where is my sister?" As soon as he finished speaking, an expanse of blood-red sword light suddenly shook the sky. In an instant, the space above the Immortal Sword Sect was directly torn apart. Jian Shifeng glared at Yi Xian. Are you crazy? You! Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Kill! A blood-red sword light instantly appeared in front of Jian Shifeng. Jian Shifeng's face turned cold, and with a flick of his wrist, a sword light shot out. Boom! This sword strike directly slashed apart Yi Xian's sword light, but the sword in Jian Shifeng's hand had already shattered. At the same time, Jian Shifeng's entire body was blasted back several dozen meters. Jian Shifeng looked at Yi Xian. At this moment, his heart was filled with shock. This Yi Xian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. After repelling Jian Shifeng, Yi Xian once again disappeared. In the next instant, a wave of blood-red sword light directly covered the entire sky above the Immortal Sword Sect. Jian Shifeng did not dare to be careless. He immediately stomped his right foot, turned into a sword light, and shot out. Chi 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 chi. In an instant, countless ripping sounds resounded in the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect. In the sky, Jian Shifeng explosively retreated. Seeing this scene, all the experts of the Immortal Sword Sect were shocked. They did not expect their sect leader to be suppressed by Yi Xian. One must know that Jian Shifeng was a famous super expert in the black-yellow great world. Moreover, he was ranked 6th on the sovereign list. But now, he was actually suppressed by a youth in his 20s. Boom! At this time, in the sky above the Immortal Sword Sect, Jian Shifeng was directly forced back several hundred meters by Yi Xian's sword. Jian Shifeng looked at the distant Yi Xian with a solemn expression. Yi Xian's combat strength was somewhat abnormal. It should be said that Yi Xian's current enhancements were too great. The power of bloodline, the power of earth, the power of space, and the golden armor he wore. Of course, the most important was the sword in Yi Xian's hand. The lethality of that sword was simply too great. The reason why Yi Xian could suppress him was that Yi Xian had that sword. In the distance, Yi Xian was about to strike again. Qingcheng, Yi clan's ancestral shrine. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as heir apparent will be replaced by Yi Lang. The speaker was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was none other than Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice suddenly rang out in the ancestral shrine. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yiling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yiling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yiling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral shrine and said timidly, Grand Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the heir, why did you cripple him for no reason? The Grand Elder coldly looked at Yiling, this is a matter of the clan, what are you interrupting for? Leave. Yiling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the Grand Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral shrine. She once again bowed to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan Hill. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Grand Elder suddenly raged, whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new heir Yiling suddenly laughed, he should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Grand Elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yiling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new heir Yiling, and he knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, young Master Yiling inherits the title of heir, and it's everyone's wish. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yiling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yiling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yiling looked at the guard, and smiled, what's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, subordinate Jianghu greets the heir. Yiling nodded, you're not bad. After I become the heir, I'll need 10 personal guards. You can be my personal guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply, this subordinate will go through water and tread on fire for the heir, and I won't hesitate to die 10,000 times. Yiling nodded, drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back, understood? Jianghu glanced at Yiling, and when he saw the killing intent in Yiling's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yiling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was dressed in a tight-fitting robe that was tattered, and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yiling's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders were frowning. The great elder's eyes narrowed, and his expression was frighteningly dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yiling, his expression turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He hurriedly looked at Yiling, and just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yiling did not stop, and he rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yiling suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yiling's expression turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yiling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Peng. Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave." Yi Ling was obviously afraid, not daring to look at the great elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders. "Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Whether or not he is crippled, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "This subordinate, Jianghu, greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You are very good. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. From now on, you will be my guard." Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince, even if it means death." Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Do not show mercy, understand?" Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, and his expression was frighteningly gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his expression turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his expression changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu's head spun, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and he rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's expression turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.